Good evening. One,
I
two,
can't-
three. Good evening. Yeah, there we go. We're coming alive. We'll call the meeting to order. And if I get Stratus to do the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, we'll do the closed session report.
For the portion that I attended, there is nothing to report.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, could you report on the portion that the city attorney did not attend?
I will, and there is nothing to report.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Litzter,
Here.
Councilmember Luevanos,
Here via Zoom.
Councilmember Judge,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
Here.
Mayor Mashburn.
Here. Okay, we'll do the agenda review. Are there any items for agenda review? Any changes, Mr. City Manager?
Nothing from me.
Okay, no one else? Okay. And just for the record, I don't know if you could hear her clearly, but Councilmember Luevanos is with us tonight via Zoom. So she's on the screen. We can all hear her. She can hear us. And I don't hear any slot machines in the background.
Why is that? Do you want to wear the mask in the city hall?
I'm sorry?
We're just wondering why is that? Is she safe or do you want to wear the mask inside the city hall?
She's on and attending a conference for the city. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I move that all resolutions and ordinances presented tonight be read in title only and all further reading be waived.
Second.
Got a motion and second. Call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, if any member of the city council may have a conflict of interest or any reason why that member must abstain from the consideration of any matter on this agenda, he or she should so declare at this time. Anybody have a conflict? None? Okay. Item 4.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, next on the agenda is public hearings. This is a time for testimony on public hearings on the consideration of matters as presented on this agenda. Let the record show that due notice was given as required by law, and an affidavit to this effect is on file in the office of the city clerk. All comments submitted by email have already been provided to the City Council and will be made part of the record. However, they will not be read by the city clerk this evening. Speakers will be called on in the order in which their card was submitted, followed by speakers who are signed on to Zoom to speak for this public testimony item 4 for a period of no more than 5 minutes each. Persons addressing the City Council are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Comments shall be limited to matters relevant to the item on the agenda and may be ruled out of order if comments are unrelated to the item. The reports of the city staff relating to these matters shall be made part of the record of this meeting. If you challenge in court any of the City Council decisions made here tonight, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at this public hearing. The time within which judicial review must be sought is governed by California Code of Civil Procedure, Section 109.6. Agenda Item 4A, a public hearing to consider the establishment of Underground Utility District Number 15, Eringer Road, Alamo Street to Cochran Street for undergrounding overhead electrical and communication lines. The reading of the resolution is as follows. Resolution number 2021-46, A resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley establishing underground utility district number 15 for Eringer Road from Alamo Street to Cochran Street. And Ron Fuchiwaki is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and council members. Joining me this evening is Justin Link, our principal engineer for traffic engineering. This evening, staff is recommending that the city council establish an underground utility district for Eringer Road from Alamo Street to Cochran Street for the undergrounding of overhead electrical and communication lines. Southern California Edison will perform the undergrounding of the lines and the removal of power poles under a program known as Rule 20A. The California Public Utilities Commission established the Rule 20A program, which requires utility companies such as SCE to provide allocations specifically for undergrounding of overhead utility lines. Rule 20A allocations are funded by customers and ratepayers in the community, and the allocations are included in the electrical rates paid by the customers. The city neither directly receives nor directly spends Rule 20A allocations. To spend Rule 20A funds, the CPUC requires the local agency to form an underground utility district for a project, which is then forwarded to SCE for design and construction, and the Rule 20A funds are utilized by SCE for the project costs. Currently, there is just over $1 million of Rule 20A funds available to the city. In 2003, the City Council approved a priority list of undergrounding projects along portions of Tapple Canyon Road, Cochran Street, Stowe Street, and Alamo Street. These projects were completed between 2005 and 2008. The projects remaining on the 2003 City Council approved priority list include 2 projects on Eringer Road. The Eringer Road projects include the segment between Alamo and Los Angeles and the segments north and south of Royal Avenue. These longer segments were divided into 4 shorter segments because the overall cost of the longer projects would exceed the funds available. Staff recommends establishing an undergrounding project for Eringer Road between Alamo Street and Cochran Street at an estimated cost of $924,000. This project would use a majority of the current Rule 20A funds, including funds for contingencies. In June 2021, the CPUC issued a decision ending funding allocations to the Rule 20A program after December 2021. As such, there will be no future allocations to borrow or mortgage more funds in order to complete larger projects. The city is presently considered inactive under the Rule 20A program, meaning SCE may reallocate accumulated funds to other jurisdictions. For the city to become active and utilize the accumulated allocations, it is necessary to establish an underground utility district and designate a project for these funds. Staff recommends the City Council establish an undergrounding project for Eringer Road between Alamo and Cochran to retain the Rule 20A funds for city use. That concludes our report, and we're available for questions.
Okay, do we have any questions of staff? This is time to ask questions of staff.
Just a couple of questions, Mayor. So if I understand this, Rule 20A program, you just stated it's funded by customers and ratepayers, so that's where the funds actually come from. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so as I understand, we're being proactive, taking advantage of this before it expires in 2 or 3 weeks, and to use the funds, which is, thank you for bringing this to our attention and making it happen in time. But my curiosity is, and I can see the value in which segment you've selected, et cetera. But what, as this CPUC, have they indicated what's going to replace, or is there anything that will replace this funding mechanism for the other 3 sections in time if we wanted to address the undergrounding?
Here we go. My apologies. Actually, CPUC has not indicated when there would be a replacement. So Till now, we have no indication of whether the program will be replaced or if it will just be reinstated in the future. But at this time, there is nothing.
And so that portion of the funds that customers and ratepayers are paying theoretically for this purpose will be used by CPUC somewhere else, or it just hasn't been necessarily allocated towards undergrounding.
They're just
To our
not being
knowledge.
reallocated towards undergrounding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mayor, I have a couple of questions. This is Councilmember Luevanos.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to know what was, because I read the report and I was trying to find what was the decision to choose the Eringer Road, Alamo to Cochran, because there were, two others that were, there's Eringer Road north of Royal, and I know that's $997,000, so that's also under $1 million. I can see why you would choose, through 1 or 3 over 4 because you want to maximize funds available. But why choose 1 over 3? Why choose Alamo to Cochran over north of Royal? Can you explain that?
Yes, Councilmember Levinos. The reason why we chose that is it was based on the priority that was established by council. So this was the highest on the priority list.
Was there a reason there was a priority? Like, is it because it's closer to the hospital, or like there wasn't a reason given, or?
Back in 2003, and I happened to be here then too. I don't recall specifically the reason. I think at the time, as I recall, the staff was just looking at the various streets that had overhead lines, sticking with the arterials primarily, and it just happened that these segments were developed back in 2003.
And Councilmember, I'll add that I think the concern is going with a more expensive project at $997,000 would not leave any money for a contingency fund without the city having to pick up that cost. So the Alamo to Cochran strand at 924 allows for contingency and probably covering the entire cost of the fund with the $1 million that we have available.
Well, I was curious as to why, I was really hoping to get the answer to that question as to why. I can understand that why financially, but I wanted to know if you knew how many residents were impacted, because even if we did have to dip into our general fund or the American Rescue Plan funds, which we're going to talk about later this meeting, it would be worth it if we were positively impact, a higher number of residents. So do you know how many residents are in the number 1 area versus the number 3 area? Especially with the PSPS events that we can consistently have, if this would help prevent that. And I've had a lot of residents that have asked me, why don't we just underground the wires? And so that's the question that I'm asking is, what would the benefit be more to more residents in that Alamo Cochran area versus the north of Royal area? Because, I don't want to just make a financial decision like this fits our budget. I also want to make sure that, we're having the most positive impact for the largest number of residents.
Actually, the segment between Alamo and Cochran is primarily commercial. And the residential areas actually begin south of Cochran. I don't believe any residents face Eringer Road, but they were east and west of Eringer Road, south of Cochran.
I guess that's why I asked about the hospital, because I know that area because my healthcare providers that are there on that area, and I don't recall seeing any residences in that area. So this will only benefit commercial on that in that row, won't benefit any residents at all. Underground those lines.
If I might say something, because that District 3, which is actually my district that I represent, and my understanding of that area quite well is that Eringer Road all the way from Alamo down to, I would say, Royal is very much commercial, that entire route. There is residence, but nothing that faces specifically out onto Eringer. Now, as you get possibly south of Royal, there are some homes that face Eringer. The hospital area that you're talking about, I think, is Sycamore, but Eringer itself, although there are certainly residences that back up to some of these areas, I'm just not aware of any that face. The thought that I had when I wondered why this was selected was that that is the most heavily trafficked area because you have your freeway on-ramps, et cetera, that would be subsumed in that area. And my thought is it possible that there's advantage to not have undergrounding when there's a lot of traffic and it might make things, I don't know, more streamlined, less prone to accidents, hitting poles, et cetera, and maybe, I don't know. And in that way, it would benefit a lot of people. But you raise certainly a valid question, Councilmember Levinos.
Okay, everybody slow down a little bit. Let's ask for the floor. City manager, go ahead.
Thank you. The Rule 220A money has been around for decades. The intent of it was not necessarily to underground wires to prevent PSPS events. It was intended to provide an aesthetic value to the community, to get rid of poles that are lining the street, get rid of traffic, potential traffic problems where you could have a vehicle hit the poles. So that was really the intent behind the program. The undergrounding isn't necessarily going to affect any PSPS events in this area, since this particular area is not usually turned off during a PSPS event. It's more of an aesthetic issue in a very commercial area of the city to remove unsightly power poles that you would find in a community.
Okay, and so I have two more questions, if I may, Mayor.
Yes, you may. Thank you.
Okay, the first question is, are we stuck with these areas that City Council approved in 2003, or can we approve other areas?
I believe the council has the option to direct staff to go back and reevaluate areas. My only precaution would be that since we are considered inactive, the sooner we can submit a project to the CPUC and SCE, the sooner we'll be able to ensure that the funds will be reserved for city use.
Okay. I have a
Okay.
question for you. Going underground has a more impact on safety of the traffic, and especially in the areas that are identified as where the work would be done, i.e., in my opinion, I certainly haven't done a count, and the traffic engineer could probably give some light on this, but that's a heavily traveled portion of our city on Eringer there. And by having the system underground, doesn't that add a certain amount of safety to that portion of the roadway? Am I correct on that?
It does reduce the objects along the side of the road that could be involved in a traffic accident, correct?
And am I correct in saying that's one of the heavily traveled thoroughfares of our city and in that particular area?
Eringer Road is one of our higher volume arterials. As Councilmember Lister indicated, it is a commercial corridor primarily. So yes, we do have higher than normal volumes on Eringer.
And if you take an overhead and turn it to underground, does that necessarily improve the service to any residential that might be there?
Well, I would say yes, because they are installing new equipment, new wiring, making new connections to the residents on either side of the street, et cetera. So you would be looking at it as they're replacing some existing wiring up and down the overheads with brand new underground system of wiring.
Yes,
So I would say that it does improve.
okay, so it makes it a stronger system, but are we having regular systems that are above ground fail on a regular basis? And I'm not talking about PSPS.
I don't necessarily.
What I'm trying to say, if I'm living there and all of a sudden Edison comes in and puts these things underground, and I've been living there for 15 years, and it's been overhead, and my electricity's fine. Is my electricity gonna get better, cheaper, anything?
I don't believe so, no.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. So the benefit, as I see it, is safety. And we're on a very busy street, and it happens to hit the cost that we're looking for.
Uh,
So we have an opportunity to make part of our road safer at a price we can afford. Am I kind of stating that in the correct manner?
Yes.
Thank you. And
Mayor, if I
I
may-
would like to add, or ask, because this is questions, that this will have no effect on PSPS events because the circuits are closed because of areas very far remote of the lower levels, such as Eringer between Alamo and Cochran.
That's correct.
So if there's a PSPS event, whether it's underground or above ground, it's going to get shut off.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, may I ask a follow-up question? I still had another question to ask.
Sure.
If this is a commercial corridor, can we use this while they underground the wires, if this is what city council decides to vote on the area to underground the wires, the utilities, can it also be prioritized as a place to put hardwire internet? What is it called? I can't think of it right now. Oh, Brian, my words escape me. You know,
Broadband?
oh my goodness. Yes, thank you. No, not the hardwire internet, so you can,
Fiber
I can't
optic?
think of yes, fiber optics. Can they put fiber optics in there as well?
Well, actually, I think beginning next week, Sci-Fi Networks will be beginning construction on the fiber network that will cover all properties in Simi Valley. So we're well ahead of the game on that.
Okay. I've actually seen cities where they, dug up the roads for, plumbing or utilities or other things, and then they covered it up and fixed it, and then they dug it up again for fiber optic, and it was just silly to me that they dug up the road twice. So I would like if we can make those things coincide. But I also have a question for Ron or Brian, whoever can answer this question. Have there been, in consideration of the many residents that for the third year in a row did not know whether they would have electricity on Thanksgiving in the city of Simi Valley, including myself, have there ever been PSPS events in the areas in Simi Valley where the utilities were underground?
Yes,
There have?
yes.
What areas were the wires underground where they had PSPS events?
I think we should stay on point as far as the agenda.
Well, is this a follow-up to the mayor's question? Because I think these funds should be used to underground utilities in areas where we do have a propensity of PSPS events, because then that precludes SCE from using the excuse of down wires to have PSPS events and deny residents and businesses and workers access to electricity, which is needed for the city to function. And this is the third year in a row that, I didn't know whether or not I'd be able to cook my turkey, whether or not businesses would have ice, to even keep our food cold, the food that we had bought for Thanksgiving. We have to address this issue. We have $1 million that we can use to underground utilities that can prevent SCE from having the excuse of having PSPS events that deeply impact financially, emotionally, our residents and our businesses. And I think we should use that opportunity to do so. We still have another meeting December 20th. So that's my opinion.
Council member, I'd like to respond to you that the underground facilities where we would see them will have no effect on the PSPS events, because what they're attempting to do is prevent fires that are in the wildland areas, not down on the city streets. And they get shut off up there, or they open the circuit up in the wildland areas, but it has the effect of shutting down the power whether it be underground or above ground in the city streets that we're talking about. I'm just trying to explain the PSPS, even though it affects us drastically on the valley floor, none of it is done because of anything on the valley floor. It's based on being in the wildland areas.
Well, I live on the valley floor and I'm impacted by them. I'm just trying to hold SoCal Edison accountable. That's all I'm trying to do,
No,
Mayor.
and I understand where you're coming from. I just wanted to clarify.
Just want to emphasize again, that looks like a topic that could be subject to a future council meeting. It should be properly
Okay,
agendized.
I
think that's
agree.
It's a
Thank you.
valid discussion, but it needs to be properly agendized.
Okay, I agree. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a motion? Oh, sorry, public
Yeah,
statement.
at this time, is there any public statements on this?
Currently, we have one, maybe two speakers. The first speaker would be Lori Mills.
Yes.
But just thought I'd put in my input. I've been a realtor for 20 years. Putting these lines underground will be great for people's real estate value. It's one of the complaints we get when we do sell homes in neighborhoods with overhead power lines. So I'm going to support it. And I actually agree with Ruth that I think the fire danger from overhead lines, whether or not you are in the wildlands, if you have sparks above combustible roofs with open eaves, that can cause problems with the Santa Ana winds. So brief, that's it. I support it.
Thank you.
Also, I have a card, but no agenda item was chosen for Chris Malden.
Yeah, I wasn't
Was
sure.
this,
I
was
wasn't
this
sure
for
what-
item number 4?
I'm sorry?
Was this for our agenda item?
Yeah, well, I don't know, I'm not sure what your item is. It's about your executive
Yes,
board
sir.
appointments.
Sir, could you speak in the microphone, and if you're comfortable with
Sure,
it,
sure,
remove your mask, and we can hear you a lot
Okay,
clear.
I would be more than happy to. No, I wasn't sure where it was on the agenda. I wanted to speak about the executive board appointments to the council. Is that appropriate now?
Next one.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I believe we may have one on Zoom.
That's it? Okay.
No, one more.
We have one member of the public with their hands raised on Zoom. Ms. Elaine Freeman, did you want to comment on item 4A?
No, I didn't. I'm on item 5. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it? All right, so we'll close the hearing. And now comments or questions from the council.
Just a quick comment when you're ready from me,
Okay.
Mayor. As I read the report, as I understand it, these are funds that are to be used for major arteries. It is time sensitive. This needs to be done within the next 2 or 3 weeks. This area has been properly identified, and I think you make a very good case why this section, if I understand what is being asked, we currently have 2 lines that have been identified. This motion will divide them in half, so now we have 4 sections, and we're taking one of those sections on Eringer from Cochran to Alamo, and that would be undergrounded. And given where that's located, what a busily traversed area that is, I think aesthetically it makes sense. As far as safety, it makes sense, and so I'm certainly in favor of going forward and appreciate that this is getting done before December 31st. So thank you.
Okay,
Mayor, if I may make a comment?
yes.
Thank you, Mayor. My comment is this. I know that this is a time-sensitive issue, but you just heard from public comment. Lori Mills stated that as a realtor, that's what helps sell homes. And this is not a residential area. This is a commercial area. And it's not that I don't want to help our businesses. I do. But I want to help our businesses by making sure they keep power on. I know it's asking a lot of staff, and I'm willing to put in the research myself with all the extra free time I have to research what areas are most impacted by PSPS events. I really think we need to take the funding opportunities that we have to address the changing issues that are impacting our residents and our businesses every single day, and that includes climate change. So I want to underground wires where it will most impact positively our residents and our businesses. That's my comment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment in the fact that you made a good choice using the statistics and the information you had available, and also reiterate that going underground has nothing to do with whether PSPS is done in that particular area or not. I just want to make sure the community is aware of that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I have one more quick comment, if I may,
Okay,
if you'll indulge me.
go ahead.
I really would like us to make decisions as policymakers, as elected officials, based on all the information. I would have liked to have known what was the decision. I know we have notes from 2003, and what were the reasons that the city council members chose those specific areas. I would have liked to have had that information before making this decision as to why we chose those areas. I wanted to know what city council members were thinking, not just, well, that's what they chose, because we're talking about almost 20 years ago that those decisions were made and those areas were chosen, and things change. This community is changing every single day, and we need to make decisions for the future of this community. We need to make our policies and our decisions based on what the community needs now and in the near future and in the next 5 or 10 years. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you, Mayor.
Do you care to respond to that, Mr. City Manager?
No, thank you. But we can certainly dig up the staff report in the minutes, provide that to the council boxes.
Thank you.
Would you like a motion now, Mr. Mayor?
I just want to say one
Oh,
thing
sorry.
real quickly, and then I appreciate it. And I just want to thank staff. I hope you understand the questions and understand why the questions are asked. It's, in my opinion, not in doubt of the work that you've done. I think it's, I have to salute the council, even though I don't know who they were back then. It looks like, to me, they made a choice that they obviously looked well into the future, because that's such a busy area. And I think the city, all city residents, because almost all of us will use that intersection at some time, and we will all benefit by that. So thank you for your time of not only listening to our questions, responding to them, but also putting together a good program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'll make a motion. All right, thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 2021-46, establishing underground utility district number 15, Eringer Road, Alamo Street to Cochran Street for undergrounding overhead electrical and communication lines.
Second.
We have a motion and second. We'll call for the vote.
Will you please vote yes for me?
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 5, public statements. This is a time for public statements on all items other than public hearings, appointments, and informational reports. All comments submitted by email have already been provided to the City Council. However, they will not be read by the City Clerk this evening. Speakers will be called on in the order in which their card was submitted, followed by speakers who were signed onto Zoom to speak for this public statement, item 5, for a period of no more than 3 minutes each. Persons addressing the City Council are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Mr. Mayor, unless you have any comments, we will begin the public statements.
Yes, I do have a comment that this is a hybrid meeting where we have both people here in the council chambers who wish to speak, and we also have people on Zoom. We have no way of knowing where, basically in the world, where on Earth, if you will, the Zoom calls are coming from. So I'll ask that you please at least identify what city you live in so we know if you're a local or not. It's not required, but it would sure be helpful to this board. Thank you.
First speaker is John Lapper. After him will come Glenn Becerra.
Simi Valley City Council members. Right now, I would rather be home watching Monday Night Football. However, instead, I will be giving my 3-minute comment regarding what one might call a football targeting penalty by 4 city council members against myself in the neighborhood council nomination process. My moral and civil character has come under attack by council members Dee Kavanaugh, Elaine Litster, Mike Judge, and Mayor Mashburn at the Simi Valley Council meetings of October 25th and November 8th. On October 25th, 3 members from the community spoke against me. 1 person emailed the city council. It was these 4 public statement comments out of 125,000 Simi Valley residents that put a halt to the 50-year neighborhood council nomination process so that the council could further vet my social media and demeanor to be on the neighborhood council. Jennifer Jones' comments were slanderous and libel. Prior to the October 25th council meeting, for the public record, I emailed all city council member documents showing my qualifications and clearly disputing Jennifer Jones' comments. Sadly, 4 city council members chose to ignore my email. That story to be continued. Hoping to avoid further complications and embarrassment to the neighborhood council volunteer process after the October 25th council meeting, I emailed the city council again, asking them to review my information sent to them and to, quote, reach out to me in person, phone, or via email with any questions or concerns about my appointment to council, neighborhood council number 4. Again, no response. Now, here I am 6 weeks later with myself and my family name being further shamed, especially after the Simi City Council's action of refusing to nominate me on November 8th. Councilwoman Elaine Litster twice referring to an incident as possibly violating doxing laws, and then an accusation of posting photos of underage students. On November 17th, I requested from the city clerk public records from the November 8th council meeting relative to the neighborhood council meeting nomination process. Now I am back to a delay of game football penalty as the documents were due to me on November 29th. The city clerk's office asked me for a delay until December 2nd. Then on December 2nd, I was told they wouldn't be ready until December 13th, next Monday, furthering the continuance of this public city council shaming of my reputation. The Simi Valley mission statement states to deliver an atmosphere that encourages community involvement and volunteerism. The city council tonight, with their council member comments in response to my public comment, can seize the opportunity to apologize to me for the way I was mistreated and for the mistakes made in the nomination process by Mayor Mashburn, thus clearing my name and restoring the good faith of volunteerism in the neighborhood councils. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and City Council. First, let me just say congratulations on naming a very fine city attorney. When I heard about that appointment, I couldn't have been happier. He will do a great service to this community, and I have no doubt keep us out of legal jeopardy. On top of being just a great human being. So anyway, I can't say enough about that appointment. I did just want to take a moment and say thank you for all the time that you shared with us today, the council being able to meet with myself and the representatives from Cavalier. As you know, they are looking to bring a major event into the community that will not only generate revenue for the community, but also be a very positive cultural and entertainment and economic development tool for the city. And we're excited about partnering with you and putting that event together and bringing that company. Many people had a chance to see the horse show that they put on Cavalier when it was in Camarillo or in Burbank and Santa Monica. It's been in Orange County. It's actually been all over the world. And they're looking to locate here in our fine community, which I think would be a great decision on their part. And I know that the partnership with the city means everything to them to make this work. So I wanted to just again say thank you for all your time today, your support, and we are looking forward to continuing the dialogue to see if we can put this all together in a formal way. So thank you.
Thank you. Just
Next.
for the record, you only used about half of your time, and that's just not like you.
I'm a recovering politician.
Next up to speak is Chris Malden, with Lori Mills following.
Thank you. Good evening, council, men and women. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your service. I really rise to speak to address the executive board member appointment for District 4. I live in on Wood Ranch in a condominium on Country Club. Mr. Lapper rose to defend Biden's failure in Afghanistan against the criticism by Representative Garcia. At the town hall in September, Biden was ordered by the Chinese Communist Party to abandon Bagram Air Force Base so that Chinese communists can utilize it for hegemony over the Middle East. The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, has stripped the working men and women of Simi Valley over the years, recent years, 15 or 20 years, of thousands of jobs, and destroyed families with fentanyl and illegal immigration. My neighbors, liberal and conservative, and I know them pretty well, I'm very active on them, will not welcome this local apologist for communism on the Simi Valley City Council Executive Board. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Lori Mills.
I wasn't going to speak tonight, now 2 times. It's kind of shocking. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Lori Mills. I live in Simi Valley. I'm calling about these masks, and I'm talking about the vaccines as well. I have HIPAA rights, but tonight I decided to bring you guys something. These are my lab reports. I am a COVID survivor. I'm currently in a study at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And I can tell you from being a COVID survivor, my spike proteins are 2,500 over those that are vaccinated. I would like to see the medical tyranny end because that's what I see this is. These masks do not work. It's a virus that has a 99.9 success for survival rate. And if this virus is so serious, why do we not have hazmat cans out on the street to pick up all of the masks that we're seeing laying everywhere? Secondly, why do we not have monoclonal antibody treatments in Simi Valley? Why do we not have therapies in Simi Valley? Why is it mask, vax, lose your freedom? At some point, and I agree with the gentleman talking about the CCP, because this was a bioweapon created in the Wuhan lab. At what point, seeing that Ventura County's pensions are being invested in the CCP, our media is infiltrated by the CCP. We've got the guy, the head of the Intel committee, compromised by the CCP. At what point is everybody going to wake up and see this is not about the virus? So again, I hope the school board can start doing meetings in person. I hope we can all, and unfortunately I had to do my own research getting into a study to find out the truth. Start holding people accountable for not telling the truth and spreading fear narratives just to control people. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Elena Johnson.
Good evening, members of the City Council. I was here last time, and Mr. Caceres, I missed you in that seat. Now I know you're there, so hi. Okay. I'm here to let you know that I continue to look at the city, and I wouldn't want to say watch you guys, but to make sure that responsibilities and the mission statement of the City of Simi Valley Governing Board are adhered to. So I did my job. Last weekend, I took a tour of the city streets, and at the corner of Stowe and LA Avenue, there is a new construction. And around that, I saw some graffiti sprawled on it. I was very alarmed by it because the sign is that of anarchy. It's a letter A and in circles. It happened to be a Sunday, so I wasn't able to go to the police department. And the following Monday, I went there. And again, I am very, very warmed by the reaction that I got from the police department. The lady in the information department took the pictures that I had. I took pictures. I wanted them to see why this is very alarming to me. Of course, all know I'm not white, I'm brown, I'm Filipino. I'm from the Philippines. When I first came in here in 1984, I was a victim of a lot of racial negative words like go back to the country where you came from. It didn't stop me because my desire was to be in this city and assimilate the culture of this wonderful city. I bring this idea to you because I saw that one of the things that the city council is responsible for is creating the budget. So when you talk about the police department, please do not defund the police department. What the city needs to do is expand the services of the police department so that we can maintain, which is another job of the city council, the safety of our citizens, the good living conditions, and the health of our community members. And I thank you for the job that you continue to do for the citizens of Simi Valley. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
That concludes the speakers. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is 5A, City Council comments.
Zoom.
I apologize. Do we have Zoom?
Yes, there are 5 members on the public on Zoom. 3 have raised their hands so far. First is Mr. Joe Pachowski. Mr. Pachowski, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. And wonders of a new computer. Good evening, Mayor Mashburn, members of the City Council. I apologize for not being there in person this evening. I had something come up where a 13-year-old needed some math help. I would have preferred to be there in person. I'd like to start off tonight by congratulating David Caceres on his appointment as a city attorney. But the real reason I wanted to speak tonight has to do with something that my wife and I watched on television over the Thanksgiving break. MSNBC, which is not a channel I usually watch, aired a documentary called In the Dark of the Valley. And while we've only been residents of Simi Valley for the last 4 years, living in Wood Ranch, that's for you, Mr. Mayor, it was actually kind of an enlightening thing. I took it with a grain of salt because of the fact that it was a documentary, and documentaries usually have a particular point of view, and it was airing on MSNBC. But it left me concerned nonetheless. And I realize that the council has very little that they can do about this because the Santa Susana Field Lab is controlled primarily by the federal government and the California Department of Toxic Substance Control. But at the same time, it was really disturbing to learn that just a few miles from everybody in town's homes, there was a nuclear reactor that melted down in 1959, and there's still residue from that on the site today. And the federal government, the Department of Energy, Boeing, and NASA have not cleaned it up in its absolute entirety. And so I'm simply wanting to call attention to this. I want you guys to do everything you can, jump up and down as much as possible, because our residents deserve to have that part of our neighborhood cleaned up in its entirety, not simply have had a recreational cleanup done, but it needs to be cleaned up completely. And so, like I say, I know that you guys don't have a whole lot of control about that, but believe it or not, I think it's something that Councilwoman Luevanos and I can probably agree on, and we don't agree on much. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ed Abele.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I'd like to speak on item 8D, the consideration of projects to be funded through the funds that the city received through the American Rescue Plan Act, and specifically the thank and ask you to follow the recommendation of the city manager for the $1 million to aid in the improvements at Rancho Simi Community Pool. I can tell you in my 5 years as a board member for the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District, we have had a wonderful relationship with the city. And it was no more telling than during the early stages of the pandemic when we at the Park District, in my year as chair, made the decision that we were going to keep our parks and our trails, and to the extent that we were allowed, our golf courses open. And I can tell you that we're proud that we were able to do that and provide that service for the community. And it was in conjunction with the city. I know our district manager was in contact with the city manager. Early on, I was in contact regularly with the mayor and several of the city council members. And it was a cooperative effort, and we were able to do it effectively and safely. And I applaud our maintenance workers for that. But as to the project itself, this would be a great contribution from the city and Park District working together for the community. I know that pool has been popular amongst our residents for decades, but it's also seen the wear and tear of decades, the pool and the adjacent building, and is in great need of repair and in great need of improvements. And while we would appreciate the city's help in that regard, more than the district appreciating it, this really is about the people. It's about our community. I've always said that government is for the people. And I can tell you, and I think all of you know yourselves, that is a popular pool. It is a popular venue. It serves the entire community. So I can't think of a better way for the city and the Park District to continue to work together. Again, I appreciate the recommendation from the city manager, and I urge all of you to vote in favor of the recommendation, specifically as it pertains to the improvements for the pool. It would be great for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Elaine Freeman?
Yes. Can you hear me, Council?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Regarding pool, the pool at Rancho Simi.
Could we attempt to get a better connection with her so we could hear the message?
Ms. Freeman, can you start it again, please? You were breaking up the first section.
Okay. Shall I start over?
Yes, it sounds like you're coming through clear now.
Okay. Elaine Freeman, board member, Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. And I'm here to discuss agenda item 8D. And I want to thank the city for recognizing the needs of the Park District as a result of the COVID pandemic. The pool at Rancho Simi is a vital part of this community. It was constructed and opened in 1977, so it has been operating for almost 45 years. Even last year during the pandemic, the district kept pool per government protocols, 1,950 visitors to the pool during that time. An important community amenity. The district has taken great care in maintaining the pool over the years, but after 44 years, it is in need of Europe. And with that, thank you. General Manager Dan Paranek will be present during the item to address more questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily, did you wish to speak? Okay, and then Simrat Kalsi, did you wish to speak?
Hi, this is Simrat Kalsi of Simi Valley, California. Just point of clarification, is this for 7A?
Yes, this is general public statements for all items.
Okay, yeah. So this is for 7A. I also sent an email. I just wanted two point of clarifications for 7A. Number one, if the motion passes, does that mean a resident could park their RV, for example, in the backyard with no covering? Is that the intent?
We're not allowed to respond to your questions under public comments.
Okay, that's fine. No worries.
You can do it later. But
Yeah, when the item's up, there'll be another opportunity.
Okay, I will then wait.
So stay on board.
All right, thank you.
No.
Okay. Could we go back to him?
Mr. Kelsey, if you can please complete your public statement, and then the council will be able to discuss the item on 7A.
Okay, let's see. Just a point of clarification. I'll just reiterate that, right? So just wanted to see if the motion, when it passes, then a resident could park their RV, for example, in their backyard with no covering. Second point of clarification. Just wanted to understand or point to where the general rule is for standard vehicles. And then once those questions are answered, then I do have 2 points to discuss or comment on 7A with some data and information.
Yeah, you
thank
need to give those statements now, and then staff will bring us back the points that you made. And we can address them at that time. I'm sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, sorry. I'm a new resident of Simi Valley. This is actually my first council meeting. So just, I understand Robert's rules, so trying to do my best here, but that's the extent of my knowledge. But yeah, so those 2 points are, number one, just again, looking at the mission statement, I think a gentleman before was mentioning it again, right? So to deliver excellent service to our community by providing a safe environment, right? So an RV, for example, could be as high as $300,000. Having it on said owner's property could allow them to, protect and, keep said RV or any other sort of vehicle safe up to their own privacy standards and, retain that said financial freedom. Number two, just if the motion does pass in the intent that I'm discussing, right, it just kind of ensures freedom of choice on top of that. And third point would be, I just do understand that I'm sure there are other reasons I could not find why it'd be one way or the other, why it was originally instated. I would love to hear those points as well. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the members of the public for public statements.
Okay. Okay, at this time, any brief comebacks to the statements, the public statements?
Mayor, I'd like to respond if I may.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mayor. As with regards to Mr. Lapper, we're going to have a discussion about code of ethics later in the meeting, but we want to encourage, at least I encourage everyone to participate in neighborhood council. That's all that I can say. I know I've responded to you via email and otherwise, and we did choose you, and you should have been on neighborhood council. With regard to the valley, the dark of the valley, I will bring that up as a 9B in the dark of the valley. Thank you, Mr. Pachowski, for that comment. I will be bringing it up if we can join that lawsuit as a 9B request, an item. And with regard to Ms. Johnson's comment about being the victim of a lot of racial negative words, like go back to your country, I want to apologize. I know that that's something that we're still dealing with, but we also need to make sure that we treat each other with dignity and respect. That includes in city council meetings, out of city council meetings, and just in general. So be kind to one another. It doesn't cost anything. Thank you.
Okay, next item.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, and there is one resolution for your consideration this evening. Consent Item 5, Resolution Number 2021-47, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley establishing the City Council meeting schedule for calendar year 2022.
Want a motion?
Yes.
I move consent calendar.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Was the only item on the consent calendar item 5?
What?
Was the only item on the consent calendar was item 5, not 1, 2, 3, and 4?
It's the only one that
That's
had
the
a
only item with
resolution.
the resolution.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so can I pull items? I have a couple questions on a couple of the items.
Okay. Which ones?
3
5.
and 4.
Okay.
I called it on 3.
Okay, item 3.
Okay, I'm just curious. I know in the state law, AB 1600, there needs to be a nexus, but I just want to make sure, because I looked at the language of what was stated there. So when we charge these impact development fees, the money, does it go into a general pot or does it have to correlate to the area? Like this $80,000 for Madera Road Bridge rehab, was that because the developer was going to impact that bridge? Like,
No,
that
it
make
is not.
sense,
It
Mr.
goes
Thomas?
into the general fund and allows for expenditure throughout the city.
Okay, so there is no nexus of the impact to the actual development. We can use it for anything.
That's correct.
Okay, that was my question on that one. Thank you. And can I ask a question for item number 4, Mayor?
Yes. Yes.
I'm just curious whether or not there was a requirement for us to do a competitive bid on this. Did we look into any other vendors for the city's 457 deferred compensation plan? Are we going to look into any other vendors, or I'm not sure if this is subject to the competitive bid process.
They were purchased.
The company that we are going under contract with was acquired by our previous contractor. So this is just a transfer of the contract to a new provider. And we will, when that contract comes due shortly, we'll be able to go out and bid and do a competitive process for it.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, ready for, well,
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the consent calendar, items 1 through 5.
I'll second it.
hold on a minute. Councilmember Litster.
I second it.
You didn't want to speak? I have
No.
you down.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to turn the mic on to say that I would second it. I apologize.
Okay.
Wrong button.
No problem. Okay, so we have a motion and second. Call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 7A, second reading of ordinance number 1319, amending Simi Valley Municipal Code Section 9-34.040 Z-S-749B regarding off-street vehicle parking in residential zoning districts and a determination that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. The reading of the ordinance is as follows. Ordinance number 1329, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley, amending Simi Valley Municipal Code Section 9-040 Z-S-749B regarding off-street vehicle parking in residential zoning districts and a determination that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and staff is available for questions.
Any questions to staff?
Mayor, I have a few questions, if I may.
Yeah, hold on, we're going to let Councilmember Judge go first.
I was just curious if staff can, or I guess Stratus there, can answer the gentleman's question from the public comments. That was my question.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I believe the public speaker was asking about the options on parking. Parking does not require to be put under a covered structure. It can be placed on the driveway. There is a zoning clearance process where staff will work with the homeowner to evaluate the proposed design and layout, and that was to address the speaker's concerns about safety and perhaps access. I believe those were the main items he was asking about. I don't know if I missed anything else.
You can't just park it in the backyard. It's got to have a pad.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be covered.
It does not need to be covered. It
'Cause
will
he did
have
ask
to
that.
be
You mentioned some.
designated where in the rear property. We can work with the applicant on a site plan and designate that area.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Judge, for catching that. Okay, any other?
Mayor, may I ask my question?
Sure.
I was concerned with this ordinance because and I know there was some confusion when we had this discussion at the meeting where we discussed this RV ordinance. But when I looked at it and we looked at the 3-foot setback and the 6-foot clearance, I did some research, and the average height of an RV is 10 to 12 feet. And there are a lot of RVs that are up to 14 feet tall. The larger RVs are 12 to 14 feet tall, of which I've seen many around the city. We did receive public comment from Tia Jones about the RV issue, and specifically about these very large RVs. And I wanted to bring up if there was, I personally would not like to have a 14-foot RV. I know, Mayor, you had mentioned that some people are using the RVs to live in. And if we have people that are living in RVs in the backyard and they're 14 feet tall and you only have a 6-foot barrier, right, a 6-foot clearance, then, is there any privacy for the neighbors? That there's only a 6-foot clearance there, and then there's only 3-foot setback. So can we consider that there would be different standards for motorhomes that are on the property line? Because that just seems like an invasion of privacy for neighbors. And I would really like to provide our residents some legal relief in terms of dealing with neighbors that might park these 12 to 14-foot high motorhomes 3 feet from their property line. So is that something that we can do? Have separate rules for these for these RVs that are being parked in backyards?
Well, it's certainly up for discussion. Do you have any other comments? No. Okay, does staff have any comments regarding Councilmember Lueveno's idea?
I think one of the items she mentioned is about fence height. We typically allow a fence in the side or rear yard of a property to be 6 feet high. There are exceptions to that rule. Sometimes if it's a house butting onto an arterial street or to a commercial property, we can allow the fence height to be as high as 8 feet. So in this case, if there's an aesthetic issue, a privacy issue, if the council wanted to consider a code amendment to allow for, let's say, fencing up to 8 feet tall for screening purposes, that is something that we could consider. I don't think the intent would be to put let's say, a 8-foot high walled compound around the entire property. If it's just a certain segment for screening of, let's say, a 12-foot high motorhome, that could be an option the council may want to discuss. Otherwise, the intent of putting it in the rear yard is to somewhat minimize the view than where it is currently allowed in the front yard. And so sometimes even a 6-foot high would screen most boats or trailers or other types of recreational vehicles, not necessarily tall motorhomes all the time.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for you. Number one, Councilmember Luevenos mentioned 3-foot setback, and I don't know if she meant that as a definite, but what is the setback for like a ADU in somebody's backyard?
Yeah, so usually we use the word setback for a building from a property line, and an ADU is allowed to have a 4-foot building face setback from the property line. What's contained in the the ordinance that's proposed before you tonight is item 6E, parking area must be set back a minimum of 3 feet from the side or rear property line. So, again, that'd be enough for a vehicle to swing open a door. But yeah, when there's a motor home, that's closer than, let's say, what a building would be.
Okay, so you can't compare the two really and truly. What is the, if there is such a thing, average height of a ADU?
If it's going to be 1 story, and I think it's 14 to 16 feet in height is typically what we see.
Okay, so as the planner, do you think that that would possibly lead to people saying, well, there's an ADU next to me and I want to screen it, so I want to put my fence 8 feet, knowing that it's not going to cover the 14 or 15 feet, but some people may prefer to go 8. And then a follow-up onto that question is, you've seen the lattice work and people have put vines on a lattice to do screening. Is that considered a fence if you add the lattice to screen something in somebody else's yard from your yard?
Yeah, if it's affixed on top of the wall, that's extending the height of the wall. And so that's part of the wall itself. Sometimes we'll do like a pergola, which is a separate structure maybe near the fence, and that's sometimes used. Hedges or landscaping trees are also other potential areas to provide buffering or screening. It doesn't always have to be a vertical barrier like a wall or a fence. So we sometimes have worked with neighbors when there's, let's say, an ADU being constructed next door, how we can maybe soften the appearance or, orient the building to minimize the impact on neighbors. As far as the RV ordinance is concerned, the intent there would be to, we originally weren't thinking about fence heights at this point.
Okay, in your opinion, regarding this statement that I'm going to make, that there are remedies available for folks to provide screening, and if we left it up to them, we would have less government intrusion, and they could still accomplish what we're talking about. Do you think that's rational thinking?
I concur. I think one of the concerns I have as a planner regarding increasing fence height is public safety. Sometimes in an emergency situation, police and fire don't need the obstacle of 8-foot-high fences to get over properties. There's also the aesthetic issue. However, I think Councilmember Luevanos raised the neighborhood, situation, but every property is different, and sometimes working with potential applicants as a way to create a buffer, be a good neighbor is, sometimes we can have a conversation at the counter and come up with a desirable outcome.
And it doesn't need then to be in our ordinance here.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I just a quick question, and I realize this is a second reading, but I just wanted to confirm that there is a permit that's required for concrete padding in the backyard that goes for this parking purpose, correct?
We call it a zoning clearance, and not necessarily so much a permit, but a review that's done by planning staff with the applicant.
So anyone that is interested in creating this parking space in their backyard needs to come and actually go through an application process.
Correct.
And I was going to ask, similar to what the mayor just asked, I know that Councilmember Leavenworth was concerned about setbacks, but what I'm understanding now is that ADUs, which we are being told are legal and have to be allowed, generally would be at the height or much taller than most RVs.
Correct.
Is that accurate to say that?
Yes.
And the setback or the distance from the property line is virtually the same that we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. And the one other question I thought that the caller asked about, I thought he asked about general parking. Are there limitations on, if this is on what can be parked on that space?
Again, so we're talking about off-street parking requirements. A lot of this is centered around motorhomes or RVs, but it's really any vehicles. So people have 6-passenger cars or trucks, boats, trailers, or motorhomes. It's anything, any vehicle is being covered by this ordinance.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may make another comment?
Yes, you may.
We received an email in public comments from a resident named Tia Jones, who discussed specifically the out-of-hand RV issues. And while I would like to think that all the residents in Simi Valley would be cognizant of each other, what the comment was made, and I'll quote from this email received from her, is that, and this is her quote: "I want to point out that destruction is happening on my street with RV owners running their RVs over the ADA compliant corner ramps and curbs. I have taken pictures, but please come to my street and see for yourselves what is happening with the numerous RVs on my street and neighborhood." She goes on to say, RV owners are not only taking advantage by parking their RV buses on the street and blocking the view of motorists for extended periods of time, for some reason they have converted the corners of their properties for RV parking and access. And these are the complaints from a resident named Tia Jones. And she asked specifically for better enforceable codes for these RVs, not to mention large boats that are left parked on the streets. So I know that there's a comparison being made from ADUs to RVs, but there's a permit process that you have to go through for ADUs, and they are permanent structures. They tend to have more insulation than an RV would. These RVs, the ones that are 12 to 14 feet tall, cost more than it would cost to build an ADU. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some of them I've seen are even over $1 million. So we're not talking about someone that buys a $50,000 RV that they use on the weekends to go out for the weekend. An 8 to 10 footer that's not gonna obstruct the privacy of a neighbor. We're talking about these huge monster RVs that Tia Jones refers to. And that's what I'm trying to provide a legal remedy for neighbors, those residents that have these, very, very large RVs that are 14 feet tall, for them to have a legal remedy. Because if we don't put it into the ordinance, they won't have a legal remedy. And then we're going to be stuck dealing with, who has the right to privacy and who doesn't. Because if you have a 14-foot tall RV and a 6-foot fence is all that you have, then you are going to be blocking views and you are intruding on privacy. And frankly, that's a huge infringement, and residents have been asking us for years to deal with the RV issue. So I will not vote in favor of the second reading of this ordinance, because I think we need to deal with the RV issue in the city. And I voted in the past to increase RV, access and ordinances and development for people to have RVs, but it is a luxury to have one. And there's a cost associated with it. I don't think our neighbors should be bearing the cost of that. I don't think our residents should be bearing the cost of that. And that's why I'm asking for more than a 3-foot setback. And if for these large motorhomes that are more than 10 feet tall, to have some restrictions. If you want to park, your smaller motorhome or your boat or your ATV and it doesn't obstruct and that's your backyard, that's fine. But I don't think it was not my intent, at least, to allow for these, monster motorhomes to be in someone's backyard and obstruct their view or invade their privacy. That's my comment, Mayor.
Thank you. For the sake of confirmation, Stratus, I asked you if there was other remedies available for screening. I think you said yes, and we discussed that, like a row of cypress trees could be one, a row of different type of hedging, and that could be extend right next to a 6-foot fence and go up, maybe 20 feet. Mm-hmm. Am I correct then in saying that there is a remedy?
There's other options. And one thing I always say, when we deal with these ordinances, it's not chiseled in stone. If for some reason a year from now we look at something, we see something different, the ordinance can be brought back to the city council. So sometimes we start somewhere, we let it play out. Maybe there's problems we're not even thinking about tonight that may come up, and we can come back to the council to address those. But I think at this point, I think the ordinance is probably addresses the vast majority of the situations we've covered at all the neighborhood council, planning commission, city council hearings, and I think it's a good start. And I think we can go forward
Okay.
from there.
All right. Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that I was on the right track when I said there is methods to do screening right now. And Councilmember Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move ordinance to adopt ordinance number 1319.
Could I just make one quick statement in response?
I'll second.
If Mayor's all right to make that, and then we vote, if that's all right.
You want to, wait, we have a motion and a second, but you want to speak.
I wanted just to make a quick response to it, because I want to make it clear to the residents at home and those who might be watching this, that when we voted on this initially the first time, part of the reason we did so as well is that we wanted to resume enforcement of the RV code as we have it on the books now. And some of what you referenced in what you read from the constituent are things that would be cited for. For instance, they can only stay on a road for a certain number of days with a special permit. If they stayed longer than that, they would be cited. If they don't have a curb cut out and they're going over illegal curbing, whatever, they would be cited. And so I wanted to be sure that our residents understand that we are taking responsible actions, because we don't want things illegally done, and we want things to be done in a way that's not destructive and that respects people's privacy rights. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and I also think it would be a good advice from this council to advise the public that when they're going to do parking of an RV on their property, that they stop by City Hall, talk to the planners or to code enforcement, and have a discussion with them, and so they fully understand their size RV, where they want to park it on their lot. And I think we had a assurance from the code enforcement that they would be working with folks for quite some time as we bring this ordinance back to life and start the enforcement process. Okay, we have a
Mayor,
motion and a second. I'll call for
Mayor,
the
with
vote.
Please, did you call the vote?
Yes, we called for
Please
the
vote no. Please vote no for me.
Okay.
Motion passes with Councilmember Luevanos voting no. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 7B, request for a vote reconsideration from City Council Member Judge for agenda item 8A, voted on at the City Council meeting of November 8, 2021, and adoption of the November 8, 2021 minutes as amended, and City Manager Gabler is here for this presentation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, briefly, the municipal code allows for reconsideration of a vote that took place. Subsequently, after the City Council meeting on November 8th, Councilmember Judge requested the opportunity to reconsider his vote on one particular item, agenda item 8A, regarding hybrid meetings. What is before you today follows the procedure that is in our municipal code, allowing a councilmember judge to amend his vote. And in order to do so, we would look for the City Council to adopt the minutes separately with a modification to the vote. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff or city manager?
I'm not sure if we can ask questions of our colleagues, Mayor. Is that allowed?
Let's ask the city attorney.
Well, I think you can make a comment, Councilmember.
Okay, I'll make a comment. My comment is, I'm curious as to why Councilman Judge would not want to have the public have city council meetings accessible to them. We had Mr. Pachowski this evening said he couldn't make it in person because he had to help his kid with math homework, but he participated anyways, and I would have hated to deprive him of the opportunity in this public process if we didn't have the Zoom option. So I'm just curious, and it's up to Councilman Judge if he wants to answer the question as to why he would want to deprive.
Sure, I'll answer. And you're twisting my thought process anyways, but that's fine. I want to change my vote to a no because I believe the public meeting should be public. People should be here for the public meeting. It's part of your civic duty. It's not a civic privilege. It's not a civic relaxation. It's a civic duty. You come here, you vote, you do your thing. I agree with the mayor when you're on Zoom, you're not sure who the person is and you're not sure where the person's from. My opinion, so I just want to change my vote.
I would be happy to make a motion.
I'm going to go ahead and comment. Hold on. I agree with Councilmember Judge, and we've never deprived anybody of a council meeting. In fact, we've done everything in our power to make sure that it's out there. However, this is overreaching, and as I stated the day we voted on this, we have no idea who's calling in, and we're not allowed to ask. I guess we can ask, they're not required to answer. So my whole purpose is, for backing this, is we went for nearly 60 years of having city council meetings in the council chambers, and there's public is always invited. I don't recall ever turning anybody away. And that's how a community government works, and that's how a community government stays community. But if we open it up to the world, and I'll bring that in closer, is I don't think it's germane to the subject, any subject that we may be discussing, if we're getting comments from Phoenix, Arizona on what we should be doing here in Simi Valley, and those comments coming from people that have never been in Simi Valley. And so that's a gift that's thrown away your local control, which government is doing on a regular basis nowadays nationwide. So Simi Valley can stand tall and have their community meetings, their public meetings, and do like we've done for the last 60 years, and have the public come here, walk up, greet us, and have their say. And I think that falls under every legal guideline there is when it comes to local government. Councilmember Litzner.
I was going to make the motion, but I will add that I hear you, Mayor, and there's wisdom in what you say. I do think, in my mind, as we had the discussion, this was only to happen as long as we were in a local state of emergency. But I concur that it is that people should be in person. But anyway, my motion was to be.
I would like to make a comment before the motion.
Hold on just a second. City manager has something.
Thank you. We do have one amendment in the minutes. There was an error in here on page 8. Under the motion to approve Rebecca Albron, we mislabeled Councilmember Levinos as providing the second. Actually, it was Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh provided the second. So we'll note that for this particular item.
Okay.
Mayor, if I make a comment?
Yes.
May I remind my fellow colleagues on the dais that the Simi Valley Code of Ethics, Section 4, Respect for Process, specifically states that we are to provide meaningful involvement of the public. I would hate for us to be subject to a lawsuit by denying those that have immune issues, by those who have other disabilities under the American Disabilities Act that are covered by that law, the opportunity to participate in our public meetings. We are a municipality that gets its authority from the state of California. And I'm proud to have anyone from anywhere comment on our city. If they want to come and comment about Simi Valley, we're that renowned, and they want to come make comments about what's happening in our city, I think that's wonderful. We have people from outside the city come here and film almost every other day. And I'm glad to have them here. I welcome them to our city. And if they want to come and make public comments about how we're governing our city, I welcome that, because we do have a lot of people that come here, that work here, that don't live in Simi Valley, but that contribute financially, socially, politically, and otherwise. And I think that's a good thing. So I'm going to stick to the Code of Ethics, which I signed, and allow for meaningful involvement of the public. And we can't look back. We can't say what happened 60 years ago. COVID has changed history. I'm a history teacher. It will be in the books forever. And we can't look back anymore. We can't say we're going to do the same things we did 60 years ago just because we did them 60 years ago. We have the technology now that we can involve more people, including those with disabilities and those with immune issues that don't want to be in public because they are fighting cancer, because they have immune deficiency issues, and they can't be in public and they want to participate. And this is the only way they're allowed to do so is through Zoom safely. And so I'm going to continue to advocate for full inclusion of all of our public, including those with disabilities, via Zoom, because it's the right thing to do.
Councilmember Levinos, the motion is just to allow Councilmember Judge to change his vote. So it doesn't really have anything to do with everything else you were talking about.
I'm just addressing the issue.
May I make a motion, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
I move to receive vote reconsideration by City Council Member Judge for Agenda Item 8A from the City Council meeting of November 8th, 2021, enter the vote into the minutes as amended, and adopt the November 8th, 2021 meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
We have a second?
Yes,
Yeah,
second
okay,
it.
thank you. Okay, we have motion second, call for the vote.
Councilmember Luevanos, your vote?
Vote no for me, please.
Motion passes with Councilmember Luevanos voting no. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 7C, consideration of a resolution confirming and renewing the proclamation of the existence of a local emergency, and consideration of a resolution implementing the provisions of AB 361. The reading of the resolution is as follows. Resolution number 2021-48, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley confirming and renewing the proclamation of the existence of a local emergency, and resolution number 2021-49, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley confirming the existence of a local emergency and authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the City of Simi Valley pursuant to Brown Act provisions. And City Manager Gabler is here for this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. With the implementation of AB 361, the City Council is required to take these motions on a every 30-day basis. We are bringing this back to the City Council at the earliest opportunity to continue the local emergency and continue implementation of AB 361, which allows for remote meetings and council members to participate remotely. More than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Your motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation for item 7B.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second, call for the vote.
Vote yes for me, please.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 8A. Authorize the city manager to execute a letter of intent to collaborate with other agencies to develop and implement a watershed management program for Cayugas Creek watershed. And Joe Deacon is here for this presentation.
Good evening, City Council. With me this evening is Kay Allen, our Stormwater Coordinator in the Environmental Program section. And I want to talk to you about water quality today coming from our storm drains. The Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board sets pollutant limits for drainage from the stormwater system, also referred to as an MS4, to surface water bodies such as the Arroyo Simi, under the authority originally granted by the Clean Water Act. The regional board's recently issued stormwater permit for Ventura County establishes both specific pollutant limits and the process for complying with requirements. Historically, and continuing with this permit, the city must monitor the Arroyo Simi, called the receiving water in the permit, and report the water quality and if limits are exceeded. If limits are exceeded, the city is non-compliant. For the first time in this latest stormwater permit, substantial financial penalties are applicable for non-compliance. There are options for compliance for all the parties under the permit, and the city could choose between two paths, essentially. One is to develop and implement its own compliance program, or, also new with this permit, the city could collaborate with other agencies to develop and implement a watershed management program. If the city chooses to comply with permit requirements on its own, then the city must immediately comply with permit requirements, including pollutant limitations, or face potential fines for noncompliance. If the city chooses to collaborate on a watershed management program, the collaborating agencies, including the city, have until September 2023 to develop a plan. The plan would describe actions needed to achieve compliance and provide a reasonable schedule to implement actions. Water quality monitoring would continue in the receiving water, the Arroyo Simi, and ultimately, the programmed implementation measures would need to result in meeting pollutant limits. The city is part of the Cayugas Creek watershed, and other permitted agencies within this watershed include the cities of Moore Park, Thousand Oaks, Camarillo, and the county of Ventura. The cities of Moore Park, Thousand Oaks, Camarillo, and the county of Ventura have indicated their desire to proceed with the watershed management approach, and staff recommends that Simi Valley join with these other agencies. The watershed management process would propose a fair cost-sharing arrangement among the agencies, but this is yet unknown what this sharing formula is. The ultimate cost-sharing formula would require further city council action at a later time. Conceptual projects that may be included in a watershed management program include diverting water to a treatment plant for treatment before releasing the water into the surface water or the Arroyo Simi, or the use of a stormwater capture and treatment devices also before release into the Arroyo. Such projects would be analyzed in detail and developed as part of this planning process. The capital investment for envisioned projects is expected to be substantial. The estimated cost to develop the Cayugas Creek Watershed Management Program is $800,000 and will be shared by the participating agencies, the five of us. The city retains the option to withdraw from the Watershed Management Program at a later time. However, upon withdrawal, the city would be required to immediately meet all pollutant limits. To initiate a watershed management program, the Ventura County Watershed Protection District, the stormwater permits lead agency, needs to send a notice of intent along with the collaborating agencies' letters of intent to the Regional Water Quality Control Board by December 13th of this year. The draft letter of intent from the city and the notice of intent from the Watershed Management or Watershed Protection District are attached to the staff report. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute a letter of intent and other related documents to collaborate with other agencies in the development and implementation of a watershed management program for the Cayugas Creek watershed. And Kay and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions of staff?
Mayor, I have several questions.
Thank you, Mayor. So if I understand it, there's not, basically it's start getting fined immediately, or we buy some time and create an agency to work together to come up with basically some compliance programs. Is that fairly accurate? And I guess what I'm getting at is, I wondered what pollutants would, if we decide to take the option of saying we can do this because what role we, et cetera, how substantial, what are exceedance right now of pollutant levels, and what would be the attenuated fines? Do we have a sense of that?
I'll answer one question, then I'll turn it over to Kay with the pollutant specifics.
Okay.
But you did, I just want to clarify, we wouldn't be especially creating another agency. We don't envision creating a JPA or anything like that.
Okay.
We believe we can share costs by agreement, at least going in, that's the intent. So I don't know that we're going to create another government agency.
Thank you.
We're just going to partner with our neighboring cities in order to share the costs. I'll let Kay cover the question about the pollutants.
On page 12, can I take this
Yes, you may.
On page 12. Oh, sorry. On page 12, it does show the list of pollutants that we would be looking at. We have had some exceedances in the past. It's not like a quarterly kind of thing or even annually, but we have had these exceedances. And if we were to, the main one is with bacteria. And that's the main thing that we have to work with. The fines that we could receive would be up to $3,000 per violation, and those violations could be compounded by day. So it could be a violation per day, so that would multiply rather quickly.
And actually, the board has discretion on their fine structure. The $3,000 is a mandatory minimum. For egregious actions, they can go further than that and charge by the gallon or take further action.
That makes sense, yeah.
And I want to point out another financial liability issue. When the regional board issues a fine for noncompliance, it opens the door for what are called third-party actions, where often it's an environmental group, but really anybody, any citizen, any group can file a court action against us for polluting and cause us to pay a penalty under the court system.
And just to be really clear about this, we're not talking about water that, well, we're talking about something we really have no control of as far as what water runs into our arroyo. But based on what is found there, that would determine whether we're fined. We're not talking about water we've already had an opportunity to treat, for instance. And so we are being asked then to capture runoff in essence before it hits, possibly. I'm trying to think of how you mitigate something of this nature. Let's say someone spills cases of oil and it runs down into the arroyo. That would create this
There are several
problem.
methods that we have to do that. Part of it is our industrial inspection program that we have. We have inspectors that if we get any kind of call of a pollutant being spilled, we go out immediately. We take mitigation measures to stop that from getting to the arroyo. If it was to get to the arroyo, then we can take measures then to try to mitigate what has been.
And that makes sense. I guess I'm thinking about a heavy rainwater that brings stuff down that hasn't come through industrial or whatever. In essence, we would be held liable for whatever the rain washed into our streams.
And that's one of our biggest concerns.
Right,
And one of our
right.
biggest issues that we have to deal with.
Gotcha.
You are essentially right. I mean, this is largely untreated.
Yeah.
It's coming down the drains.
Okay, thank you. I
We
just
don't
wanted to
have a lot of control over much of what goes into the urban runoff.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Or,
Mayor, I have several questions.
okay,
Thank you, Mayor. May I have the floor?
yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have several questions. I noticed that perchlorates and radionuclides are not on that list that starts on page 12 of things that are detected, but the state did pass something that we are to now detect perchlorates. Is that correct?
I believe you're talking about drinking water. This isn't a drinking water issue. So I think the regulation that the state is working on is a perchlorate limit for drinking water.
Okay, so we
Which is not
wouldn't
part of
need to
this
track that.
discussion.
Okay, how about radionuclides?
Say again, please.
How about anything that's radioactive? I didn't see that in any of the lists. We don't detect that. We're just detecting bacterial contaminants.
We don't have a limit for radionuclides in this permit.
Okay. I saw that there was on there, well, I'm going to ask you about the concerns because if we implement our own, I understand the cons are the costs, right? We have to bear the costs ourselves. We can't share it with other cities. However, does that mean that we're not going to look at the contaminants for another 2 years until September 2023? Because I can see where a lot of residents, including myself, would be concerned about those contaminants not being detected, especially since there's cities now around the world that are actually using wastewater to determine whether or not there's going to be an outbreak. They're actually predicting COVID outbreaks based on the contaminants they find in their wastewater. So does that mean we're not going to detect anything for another 2 years?
We have been monitoring the constituents in the arroyo for at least a couple decades now. And so we keep track of that. If we come up with something has exceeded, we investigate it and try to find what may have caused that. During the 2 years between now and 2023, we will be working on bigger plans to address this issue and procuring funding to create these projects. One of the projects may be a diversion from the arroyo or from urban runoff into a treatment plant so that that water is treated before it's released back into the arroyo. But we won't be just sitting around during that 2 years. We will be working and we will be continually monitoring that water to make sure that we are not having exceedances. And if there are an exceedance, we will be working to find out what caused that.
Has the lack of penalties, because so far penalties have not been imposed, is that correct?
Correct.
So you stated that the main issue that we have is with bacteria, so we have had exceedances. Do you believe that not having fines for the next 2 years will have us work less diligently in preventing those contaminants? Because my understanding is the reason why there are fines is because once there are financial penalties, then municipalities tend to work more quickly in addressing those issues to avoid those exceedances. And my concern is without the penalties, without that, then we won't be addressing the issue as quickly. There won't be as much of a urgency to address it because there's no financial penalty.
No, we do see an urgency.
Before you answer that question, I just want to make sure I would recommend against making any admission as to whether or not there's been a violation or something that's been subject to a penalty.
I'm just asking her opinion on whether or not she thinks it would help or not help.
I think, this is water being tested in the Arroyo Simi, west of the sanitation plant. Is that correct, Joe, primarily? Okay.
No, actually, it's east.
East, okay, just east.
The one monitoring station is east of the sanitation plant.
Okay. So this is testing water that's in the Arroyo that is surface draining to the Arroyo itself. It's not anything coming out of our plant, which is tested on a regular basis. And we continue to test the water in the Arroyo as we've done for a number of years. This is a plan in order to further clean water in the Arroyo that is hitting the Arroyo before it goes further downstream towards Moore Park, Camarillo, Thousand Oaks, and into the aquifers and the underground detention basins that are there. So this is an effort amongst all the cities to further clean the watershed, which is in the Arroyo Simi, as it's moving out of Simi Valley.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions, if I may, Mayor.
Yes.
One question is with regard to liability. If we do find that there are people that are, pouring contaminants right down, whether intentionally or inadvertently, and causing, whether it's bacterial or, other contamination that cause these exceedances, do we have legal remedies to sue them so that they can stop?
We do.
Yeah, we've had that for a long time.
Okay, and we've pursued those, I'm assuming, yes or no?
Where necessary, yes, we have.
Okay, so we could recoup those costs if we exceed that, if we get fined.
If we are able to identify the source of those, yes, we can.
Okay, and then my second question is, I saw in page 2 of the report, it says the city must meet receiving water limits on pollutant concentrations. While I know we're concerned about heavy, rainfall, bringing contaminants to the arroyo, I'm concerned about the fact that the California Department of Water Resources announced a 0% allocation of water to the state water project. And if there's less water to flush out contaminants, that we're going to have more exceedances. What is your opinion on that? If we have less water, does that mean we're going to have more exceedances?
Not especially. And it remains to be seen whether that does impact the drains. Likely it will, but we didn't see a huge change in the regime of the stormwater during the drought that we saw in 2016-17. Is that correct? Yeah, other than that, we had a change in source water and we had more chlorides in the source water. We did see that go up in the Arroyo.
Okay, and then I have one last question, Mayor. Thank you for indulging me. The last question is about Golden State Water. We service 2/3 of the residents in the city of Simi Valley, but Golden State Water services the other third of the residents in our city. Are they impacted by this, or what is their role to play in this watershed management?
Isn't that drinking water? I think that's drinking water she's talking about.
Yeah, again, the households that are, the households and businesses served by Golden State are covered under this permit, as are those in Waterworks District 8. It's the city's permit, not the water districts.
This only covers the water that is in the arroyo. It doesn't cover drinking water.
Okay, so if they use contaminated well water for their that doesn't impact us. None of that water goes into the arroyo.
I have to ask, who knows that they use contaminated water?
I believe they meet drinking water standards.
Excuse me, I want the documentation that Golden State uses contaminated water.
It's my understanding Golden State meets drinking water standards.
They provide drinking water.
Routinely meet drinking water standards for
And they
water they provide.
And they use contaminated drinking water. I think that's what council member just said.
Well, they've used well water. They themselves have admitted in a public hearing for the regional water district that they use up to 85% well water, which has been proven to have contaminants in it, inclling radionuclides and perchlorate.
I would like to see the proof because
I don't know if that impacts us. That's my only question. Is it if it's released into the arroyo?
You've been talking a lot. It's our turn. My concern is sitting up here on the dais telling a water purveyor in this city that he or she or that company is processing and selling contaminated water. I think that's a broad statement, and I think there's a liability stuck with it for us sitting up here saying that.
I was asking a what-if question, Mayor. If you would have allowed me to finish. If you would have allowed me the opportunity and the dignity and the respect to finish asking my question, you would have heard it all.
Stop. Stop. Now the city attorney wants to say something. You've had the floor for a long time. We all get to speak. Hold on.
I think it's important, both Mayor and Councilmember Luevanos. I think it's important for both the Mayor and Councilman Luevanos to stay on point here on the agenda, on the item that's before you, which is whether or not there is a authorization to execute a letter of intent to collaborate with other agencies to develop and implement a watershed management program for the Cayugas Creek watershed. Some of the questions, there is some latitude, but I just don't want to go too far afield and focus on what that issue. I would recommend that.
I'll take that recommendation because that's exactly what my protest is here. We're talking about and we're levying accusations against a company that I don't know those accusations to be true, and I don't have any documentation in front of me to validate it.
I simply asked whether or not we were impacted by that. That's all I wanted to ask.
Okay, Councilmember Litzer.
Just one, a question, just so I understand. Your report's excellent in terms of giving the rationale why we want to go forward with this, but is this possibly an opportunity for us to build maybe rainwater collection, a way of banding together to possibly kind of a storage opportunity? Is that part of this, or is this really more just, excuse me, a way to simply make sure that we're meeting these levels?
During the 2-year period that we will be working on the watershed management programs, we will be looking at a variety of different ways that we could possibly both capture stormwater, runoff, and also keep pollutants out of it. So something like a rain garden could be something that would be on the table. At this point, we haven't delved too deeply into what type of projects we will be looking at.
Very fair. Okay, thank you.
Could, I think in fairness to the public and those watching, those that are in the room, we use the term watershed like everybody knows what it is. And I think we should explain what watershed means, because what I'm hearing is even some on the dais don't understand that we're talking about.
I brought an expert.
Thank you. We're talking about the runoff that comes out of the hills. It comes out of our industrial areas. It comes out of our residential areas. It goes into the arroyo, and then you're testing it to see if there's contaminants. And then you are the police, in a sense, that if there are contaminants, you backtrack it and try finding out who is releasing those contaminants, correct?
Exactly.
And it has absolutely nothing to do with our drinking water supply.
It really does.
It's related to some extent, however, because some of the runoff is from irrigation. So I don't want to completely dismiss it.
Okay, I'll buy that. I'm glad that is helpful. Yeah, but I'm really having a trouble with you saying that, because I trust that Water District 8 is testing all that water before it's ever put out. And if you're telling me you're waiting for it to come down the arroyo out of somebody's hose, and then you're testing it to see if our drinking water is okay, you got me in a world of worry.
That's two different things again.
Exactly.
It is.
Because once it comes out in our yard, it's going to pick up any fertilizers and oil in the driveway.
Pesticides,
The list goes on and on.
everything.
But I think there's a distinct difference that we didn't clarify to the public we serve, that we're not talking drinking water.
We're not, no.
And watershed is the runoff.
The watershed is the area of land that tributaries and things from the mountains come down, make larger streams, come into maybe an arroyo, a river, but it's that whole area of land that is covered by that water system. And that water also includes water running down from the hills. It includes runoff that could be carrying pesticides, pet waste. It could include industrial runoff, which is why we regulate them as much as we do. It encompasses any water that is on the ground and goes into the storm drain system and then into the arroyo. Does
Thank
that
you.
help?
Yes, thank you very much. And I just wanted to make it clear, because I know sometimes we know the language and we don't share. It's a different language that we're using. And I think it's important that we share that with the people that are listening. And that would include rainwater.
Most definitely.
Hopefully.
Yeah, if we had any. Good point, well taken, Joe. Any other comments?
I'd just like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a letter of intent, related documents to collaborate with other agencies in the development and implementation of a watershed management program for the Cayugas Creek watershed.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion, and a second, call for the vote.
Please vote no for me. I would rather this be implemented sooner rather than 2 years later. That's my rationale for no.
Vote passes with Councilmember Luevanos voting no. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is item 8B, discussion and possible action regarding the City of Simi Valley Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected officials and members of appointed boards, commissions, and committees. Samantha Argabright is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. The City Council adopted its Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected officials and members of appointed boards, commissions, and committees on June 17, 2002. It was last modified in September of 2019 to remove the Rotary International's four-way test. In accordance with the document, the Code of Ethics is to be considered by the City Council in the fall of each odd-numbered year. The Code of Ethics is a values-based document which focuses on behaviors to be demonstrated rather than a rule-based document with a punitive focus. Members of the Council, Planning Commission, and those appointed to the boards, commissions, and committees of the city must review the Code of Ethics and sign the statement of commitment upon their election or appointment to acknowledge their receipt and acceptance of the contents of the document. Mayor Bashburn has recommended to staff that members of appointed boards, commissions, and committees be required to take AB 1234 ethics training as part of their appointment to their volunteer position. AB 1234 requires that certain elected and appointed local government officials complete an ethics training course every 2 years if they receive compensation for their services or are reimbursed for their expenses. While members of the city's boards, commissions, and committees are not compensated for their services or reimbursed for their expenses, the City Council may wish to direct volunteer members of the city's boards, commissions, and committees to complete no-cost AB 1234 ethics training online as an added educational component. It is recommended that the City Council discuss the City of Simi Valley Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected officials and members of appointed boards, commissions, and committees, and take action if desired. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, comments of, questions of staff?
Yes, I have a question, Mayor.
Yes,
Well, I have a question for staff.
I'm sorry?
I have a question for staff. May I ask a question
Oh,
of staff?
yes.
Is that Samantha? I can't see it on my screen.
It is.
Hey, Samantha. Are there other cities that have our code of ethics is self-enforcing? Are there other options besides self-enforcing that other cities have? And
The last time I researched this, it's been a number of years, so my research is a bit old. Some cities did have independent ethics committees, but there weren't very many. Many of them were similar to our structure.
okay, so they were self-enforcing?
Correct.
Okay, and those who had independent ethics committees, I'm assuming that there was some sort of consequences for violating the code of ethics?
There were. Again, it's been a little while since I've researched this information, but typically it would be information would be considered by the committee, and then a recommendation would be made to the council. But ultimately, the council was still the body in which the elected official or appointed member would be held accountable to.
Okay.
Go ahead, Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha, for the report. As I understand the report, as I read it, part of the discussion today is to decide whether we would like to ask our volunteer councils and commissions to basically take the AB 12234 ethics training, which we are all required as employees of the city to take. Isn't that kind of the question that the report was pointed towards, that we're discussing?
That is an option for the City Council to take. Certainly, this is also an opportunity to review the document and determine if there are any other edits or additions or changes that the council wishes to make at this time.
Gotcha, thank you. And with regards to whether we want commissions to do the training, it is generally a 1 hour training?
It's a 2 hour.
2 hour, sorry, 2 hour training. It's generally a 2 hour training. And I guess my question is, if we decide because certainly we want everyone functioning in an ethical way, regardless of their position with the city. And obviously it's good for all of us to have refresher courses regularly on what is or is not ethical. But I guess my question is, could we put language in this that said that we strongly encourage it, but it's optional for some of these commissions? I mean, could the language be stated that way?
And that would be the discretion of the council, however you would like to word that, if that's the desire of the council.
I'd like to respond. Why would we lower our standards? We want to make this the most dignity, integrity-filled governing body, whether it's a volunteer position or not. 2 hours of time? Is that
No.
asking too much?
No, and we're not asking them to do it all at all right now. As I understand, is that correct? We're not asking.
And I think we've witnessed just recently multiple cases of where we've had to talk to employees and talk to individuals. And I happen to have just taken the course because we're required to. it's a valuable course. You learn things, and I think it would be highly risky. I mean, I would never understand why you would want to lower the standards by not. I want to raise the standards so we have the highest ethical standards. I don't care what city.
And I think we're on the same track. I mean, I think we both are.
Well, I just heard you say you want to make it voluntary. That's
Well,
not on the same track. I don't want to be on that track.
No, I want, but right now, they're not required. And so the track I was suggesting as a possibility is, yes, that we invite them, we ask them, we encourage them. What I'm hearing you say is you would say, and we require them.
Yes.
So, and I'm hearing you.
But, I mean, I haven't done a survey of other cities, but I would certainly think that that's a very logical and professional position. And I would ask our attorney to comment if he wishes. I mean, 2 hours is not asking too much. And it's online at your own pace. You're not timed. I mean, well, you've taken it, so you know. So anyway, I asked to put a standard in there, and it's not even a high standard. It's a standard, and it's accepted throughout. And it would help with the liability issues here, and it may even keep some events, some negative events from actually happening because you learn things from the course that you didn't understand. You didn't know that what doing these items are harassment because you've never been taught that before. And here's an opportunity to learn that and avoid violating anybody's rights while acting in the name of the city. So I really don't understand why we would lower the standard. We would raise the standard.
Just to respond to your question or your comment, you can legally require completion of AB 1, 2, 3, 4 of all those subcommittees and so forth. So you can legally ask it if the council decides it by way of majority that they want to do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from us, council?
Mary, yes, I have comments, Mayor, when it's my turn.
Elaine, you're.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It was me.
Okay, Dee Dee, and then you, Ruth.
Thank you. I think it's a good idea to have all of our board and commission members take AB 1, 2, 3, 4. You do learn a lot, and it's a good reminder sometimes also. The only question I have is how are we going to track it? So I'm considering staff time. So that would be something I would look at. Like, for example, Emily has neighborhood council. Would we require Emily to monitor her group, and would we require the chair of each group? That would be my only concern on that is to make sure that we have enough staff and they're able to do it without any undue hardship.
So we currently monitor each one of the committee members that would take this also have to fill out and sign the code of ethics. So it's just checking one more box for all of those individuals. I don't think it would. I don't think it would increase that much of a burden upon staff, and the value may be there as a trade-off.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Dee Dee, I just took it, and I didn't even have to print the completion certificate. It automatically went by computer to
I'm sorry, Mary, was it harassment or ethics that you just took?
harassment.
And I think this is different. We're talking about the ethics training, and they're both wonderful.
What's the difference? I mean, yes. I get your point. We
No.
took both of them.
No,
Okay, Councilmember Luevanos.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a comment. With regard to our code of ethics, there was an article in Western City Magazine specifically about code of ethics that discusses specifically that we, those on the dais, are the ones who set the example for the tone of our city. And I quote, it states, council members sometimes themselves display an appalling lack of respect for each other's staff and or the public they serve. Invariably, the council's example sets the tone. Disrespectful conduct on the council's part normalizes such behavior by the public attending the meeting or watching it on television or online. The cycle then repeats for the worse. It also undermines employee retention and recruitment, fueling political apathy and discouraging public participation. I just want to remind my fellow council members on the dais, that is the only woman of color, is only Latina, I expect to be treated the same, with the same respect as everybody else on the dais, because it sets the tone for how other women of color are treated in the city. You can see there's not a lot of people there at city council chambers, and that's because of how we treat each other on the dais. And that's how people are treated in neighborhood council meetings as well. I agree with you, Mayor. I think that everyone who is appointed should take the ethics training. I think we need to raise the standards of accountability, but I think we need to take a look in the mirror and start with ourselves. Start with how we speak to each other, how we treat each other, that we truly act in what is in the best interest of the public and not take into account our own personal feelings. We just denied someone the opportunity, Mr. Lapper, the opportunity to serve on neighborhood council due to personal opinions, which is a violation of the code of ethics. And so we have to take into mind that if we don't follow page 8, which is creating a positive workplace environment, that we're going to have city employees leave. We're not going to have people that are going to want to volunteer to be on neighborhood councils. It starts with us on the dais. It starts with how we treat each other, treating each other with dignity, with respect, even when we disagree, even when it's late and we're tired and we're impatient. It is our job to be patient with each other. It is our job to be respectful of each other. It is our job to treat each other with dignity. And that is what I'm reminding the city council of. I told the city manager, I told Brian Gabler several weeks ago, I would not go to a neighborhood council meeting with a neighborhood council executive board member who had supported people that had threatened me physically, verbally. And the fact that I'm still receiving threats is because of how I'm treated on this dais. I just want to remind you.
Okay, any other comments? Councilmember Judge.
Move to direct staff to make no changes to the Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected officials and incorporate the requirement to complete AB 1234 ethics training into the Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected officials and members of appointed boards, commissions, and committees.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Call for the vote.
Vote yes for me, please.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is item 8C, consideration of proposed terms and conditions of the resolution for confidential designated employees. And City Manager Gabler is here for this presentation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, beginning with the, let me back up. In 2001, the city has been through several negotiation processes with our bargaining groups. Beginning with this negotiation cycle, the council determined it would remove employees that are involved in the bargaining on behalf of non-represented management group into its own unrepresented group of confidential employees. These positions were not recipients of the package provided to management designated employees as outlined in Resolution 2021-39 that was approved by the council on September 27th of this year. In considering the policy and goals communicated by the City Council for the negotiation process regarding salaries and increases, staff is bringing forth a new resolution for these confidential employees that follows along the path that was recently approved for the management designated group. Staff is presenting the resolution for consideration to provide transparency tonight and to solicit public consideration and comment period before placing it on the City Council's agenda for final consideration at the next City Council meeting on December 20th. The following along the what was previously approved for management employees, after final adoption, this group would receive a COLA of 2%. Also, after following that adoption of the City Council, there will be a one-time payment of 2% based upon annual salary or the base pay of these employees. And then as of July 1 of 22, there will be a 1.75% increase as a COLA as well. The government code section requires that the City Council orally report in open session a summary of salary, salary schedules and compensation in the form of fringe benefits for certain local agency executives. As such, in accordance with the government code section, the city council and our city staff will provide that report at the city council meeting on December 20th. So at this time, we are asking for the council to consider the resolution as before you, presenting the confidential employee management group a package, and provide for the opportunity for the public to provide input, and then place this matter on the agenda for the December 20th meeting. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Questions of staff?
Yes, I have a question, Mayor, if I may.
Yes, you may. Sure.
Have we, do we give the public opportunity to provide input for other employee groups?
Yes, we do. This follows with all the other bargaining units we have dealt with.
Okay, so we would need to make a motion for 1 and 2 then, to be in alignment with all the other employee groups? Is
That's
that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, Mayor, if there's no discussion, I'll make a motion.
I was going to make the motion, but since she offered, that's fine. I have no discussion.
You make the
Okay.
motion, Councilwoman Litzler, and I'll second it. How about that?
Who made the motion? Did you?
Actually, yes, I was going to make a motion.
You made the motion, and Councilmember Luevanos seconded. So we have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Vote yes for me, please.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 8D, consideration of preliminary projects to be funded through American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, and approve the transfer of $5 million in ARPA funds to the Streets and Roads Funds for arterial street projects, and City Manager Gabler is here for this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As part of the American Rescue Plan Act, the city will be receiving an allocation of $15,325,294 to be received in 2 different allocations. The city has received the first allocation of $7.6 million and will receive the second allocation next year. In complying with the interim final rule, we still don't have the final rule from the Department of Treasury on how to use these funds. But in following the interim final rule, the city must obligate the funds by December 31 of 2024 and fully expend the funds by December 31 of 2026. So we do have some time. There are 7 broad categories in the use of the ARPA funds. They are public health, negative economic impacts, revenue replacement, premium pay, services to disproportionately impacted communities, administrative, and infrastructure. One key thing for that would want to remind the council of in allocating these funds is because the ARPA funds represent a one-time funded projects by the city we should be considering projects that do not create an ongoing financial obligation for the city or for any recipients. And generally, the use of the ARPA funds is forward-looking. However, the interim final rule allows funds to cover costs incurred back to March 3rd of 2021. As we look at the revenue replacement category, the city has identified an estimated $5 million in revenue loss as a result of COVID. This number has gone through several reviews, including a review by the city's auditors. In assessing the needs of the city, the city has provided a high priority to addressing our arterial streets. Because of the $5 million revenue loss, the city is able to transfer that money and to use for general city purposes, city government purposes. We would recommend that the city council transfer $5 million of the ARPA funds to the general fund to be allocated to the city's Streets and Roads Fund that will provide for addressing the city's highest priority arterial streets. We do have a total priority list of about 12 different streets that are in need of a repair that are arterials. This would cover, that number is about $12.9 million. This would cover almost half of it. In looking at the rest of the list of preliminary projects, it was developed taking into consideration the numerous opportunities that are provided to businesses and the public to address impacts of COVID. The staff report does provide for a lot of information on the various business programs that have been available to address impacts to businesses. The federal government has infused over $300 million to Simi Valley businesses through the PPP program as well as the EIDL program. In addition, the city has had a rental assistance program for businesses, as well as the County of Ventura going through 4 rounds of business assistance grants to businesses out here in Ventura County. City staff worked very hard to ensure that we were well represented in the county's assistance, providing help to businesses to get them to apply, and we were fairly successful in getting city businesses to be successful in getting their grants from the county. Also, there have been a number of opportunities at the residential rental assistance, both through the federal government as well as the state and the County of Ventura. There currently exists the continuing state program of Housing is Key, and the criteria for qualifying for that is in the staff report. Housing is Key does provide assistance to both renters as well as landlords, and can look backwards as well as forwards in providing rental assistance as well as utility assistance. So the rest of the list addresses various different types of programs that the council can consider. I will note that programs and projects that are located within the city's qualified census tract, and that is identified on, forgive me, page 10 of staff's report, automatically qualify for eligibility through the ARPA program. There are several suggested projects on this list that would address issues within the qualified census tract, and would encourage you to look at those as well. Because the ARPA funds do not need to be obligated until December of 2024, it's recommended that the council take a look at spreading the allocations out over multiple years in order to provide and ensure the continued and lasting assistance to reach beyond the pandemic's effect. Further, the city's loss recovery timeframe is through December of 2023, which allows any potential losses this year to be absorbed in future allocations through the ARPA funds. Staff requests the City Council at this time to take a look at the preliminary projects that are listed and provide input regarding any identified projects, or for staff to include other projects that may not be contained on the list. We will return to the City Council with your input at a later date after the first of the year. Additionally, staff recommends the City Council approve the transfer of $5 million in the ARPA funds to the general fund and then to the city's Streets and Roads Fund to be used for streets and roads projects as soon as possible. This concludes staff's report. I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mayor, I have several questions, if I may.
Yes, you may.
The first one is, I noticed there's $1 million for the renovation of the pool. I wanted to know, did the school district or Parks and Rec district, did they receive American Rescue Plan funding as well, or just the city?
The Park District does not receive any ARPA funds.
Okay. Would they be willing to match any of the funds that we're providing for that, or not?
I believe, and Mr. Perenick is here, but I believe the project that is proposed at the Rancho Simi Pool and Pool House is a tri-agency project among the Simi Valley Unified School District, the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District, and the City of Simi Valley. So all 3 agencies would be participating in this, the proposed work.
Okay. My next question is, and I've asked this before, so I'm going to ask again. are we going to finally allow the public to weigh in on the use of these funds? I've asked at several city council meetings for public to have input and thank you for putting together this list of projects. But I would like for the public to have input. There might be stuff that's not on this list that they think is really important as well. And I know that roads are important. I know that infrastructure is important. But I want to make sure that the public has the opportunity to weigh in on this. So will they have an opportunity to weigh in on what they think is a priority? This is their taxpayer money. And maybe rank them? I'm not sure. Is that a possibility?
That's entirely up to the city council.
Okay, so that we could decide to have public input, whether it's public comments or, you know, emails or whatnot, we could do that?
You certainly could.
Okay. And then here's my my question. I know that Ron is probably expecting this question. With regard to the roads, I know that there's a lot of residents who do drive on the roads and have been having to share a lot of the roads, especially the streets, with a lot of trucks and whatnot, and there has been a lot of damage. So I'm happy to support the $5 million transfer to the roads, but I want to make sure it's going to the areas where we haven't had funding for those roads. And I'm going to cite a specific area, which we did not get to, that area between on Cochran, between Sequoia and Topo Canyon, which is still damaging a lot of axles, and a lot of struts are going damaged because of that. And we haven't had funding for that. So can we make sure that's included in the roads that are repaired?
As a matter of fact, that's number one on the list.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And last but not least, and I'll bring this up as an 90 as well. I know that there's no way that this $15 million covers all of the infrastructure that needs to be repaired. So I will be asking in a future 9B if this city council would consider raising taxes to help pay for this infrastructure, which we so desperately need to keep the city running. And those are, oh, sorry, one more question, Mayor. The $1.6 million variance, would that come out of the general budget if we were to approve everything here, or is that just to show us like what we should cut?
If you were to approve the entire list, you would have to come out of the general fund with 1.6 million. We're suggesting, we're giving you more than enough. If you'd like to cut some projects, we certainly can provide some from input on those. But yeah, we're not counting on having to come out of pocket on any of these.
Okay, so this is like a menu we get to choose from.
That's
this menu.
correct.
Yes?
That's correct.
Okay, and then there may be other stuff that's not on the menu that we can choose as well?
If the council has other projects they'd like us to take a look at, we'd be more than happy to take a look at.
Okay, and that my other concern was, you said this is the preliminary, so we're not sure whether or not these would all be projects, or are we pretty sure these are projects that we could do?
These we believe all of these projects would qualify under the ARPA funds.
Okay, thank you. But they're not the final rules yet, or they are?
If you, we don't have the final rules, but I would not expect that any change to the final rule would end up kicking any of these projects out.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. City Manager, would you explain? I'm a little confused here. If $5 million for streets, and then we're looking at the potential of giving the Park District $1 million for the pool repair.
Yes, sir.
So does it fall under one vote here?
So you have $15 million to divvy up over a 4-year period, five-year period. Our recommendation is to take $5 million and as the backfill for the revenue loss, and put that towards streets and roads. That leaves $10.3 million. Of that 10.3, how would you like to address the projects that are left over? If you would like to include the Park District in this list, then an acknowledgement of, yes, we want that funded, then we can allocate that. We can allocate that money today because we have $7.2 million that we've already received.
And the remainder on the list, we can do at a later time after we have discussions with our constituents or whatever the case may be.
We can do that later. The second round of money, I don't believe shows up until May of next year.
So we have
So we do have time.
plenty of
This
time,
is,
but we could allocate the funds to the pool now along with the streets.
yes, you can.
Okay.
And
Okay, that answers. I apologize, I got.
oh, no
confused.
problem at all. And I think between now and then, if there are projects in here, we would have to come up with, we'd have to draft agreements. We would have to draft guidelines for use of the funds, for reporting back to us. So there's a lot of work ahead. If you were to identify some of these that we would still have to do as time goes on.
Okay.
So that will take us through probably till May when the next pot of money shows up.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Questions? Dee Dee?
Mayor,
Thank you. I looked over this report, and it's very comprehensive and it's very detailed. I did give Ron Fujiwaki a hard time because he has the most money in infrastructure. Said, how'd you rate that? But I like the way we distributed it pretty much through almost all 7 areas of what was available to us. I do agree with forwarding the $5 million to our roads, especially since the number 1 area is one I drive frequently, along with Councilmember Luevanos. And in regards to the $1 million for the pool, I'm very familiar with the Park District's budget, having been on the board before, and how it works. I'm also very familiar with the age of the pool because it opened the year I graduated from high school. We took pictures at that park. And I know the use is pretty heavy, and it is our only public park available to our community. There is no other, public pool. There is no other public pool, and it does not make money. It never has. It does not make money. So the only thing I would look to is maybe, since we're all 3 going to consolidate, hopefully, and work together for the pool, maybe we can have a free day for the local community, once a summer or twice a summer, something like that, just as a pick-me-up for somebody that might not be able to afford to go that day. So, okay, perfect. That was my only concern or questions.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Great idea.
I have another comment there when I can.
I'd like to say the same thing, basically regarding the pool. Only thing, that was way before my time. So,
Hey, wait a second.
No, I go by the pool often. I've only used it a few times over the years, but to me, it's in a strategic location to serve the community and to serve many of those in the community that wouldn't have necessarily the ability to get a ride to the beach or a ride to some other public pool. And so it's in a great location, and it's served so well for so many years. And I think you made comment that it doesn't make money. It doesn't. It makes smiles, and it really is strong at making community, and that's what this Park District and this city, I think, is known for, and would like to continue that. And I think that's almost incumbent upon the city to help. And I would very much like to see the $1 million allocated towards the pool. Councilmember Litzner.
Thank you. I just want to clarify what we're trying to decide this evening. As I understand, we have this list that we could tonight say, great, let's do it all, and then in essence we will have. We could choose to approve this list tonight and then be done, or we could choose to say this is a nice temporary list. We would like to, others can add to it, and we can finalize the list at the next meeting, for instance. That would be an option. Am I correct, Brian, with that assessment?
That's correct. And it doesn't even have to be the next meeting. I would recommend coming back, January or February to come back.
Because I guess that's what I'm saying. I have read the list. I like the list. In fact, to be honest, the census tract number 78 that's in discussion falls within District 3. I'm grateful that there are the 3 things that are identified. Certainly the swimming pool, which would be lovely to have that renovated. In fact, as I drove by it on Saturday and saw there was a tournament going on and all the pop-up tents, and I thought all those people trying to use that little dressing room area, that's kind of embarrassing. It's time to get it updated. So yes, so I got that. Water line replacement in that area, I believe they were for updating home improvements, specifically focused in homeowners in that census tract area. So I think that that's excellent that we're looking at that census tract. I look at this list and it's great, but I concur that it would be nice if others would like to maybe weigh in with a few thoughts. In fact, I have a little project that maybe would also like to add to this list, but maybe we'll wait to add it with those who are making suggestions, and we can.
Yeah, the way I understand it is, if we approve what staff recommendation is, the 5 million would go to the roads, and then the 1 million to the pool. If
we have to
go down-
articulate that, I believe.
I'm sorry?
We have to choose to articulate that if we want to do it.
We stipulate that tonight, and we can. I'm not saying we will. And then there'll be a new number to go to everything else, and that's the one that we can wait and do at the first of the year after we do our research and where it should go and what have you. And you can go out to your constituency. And I do like to point out, and I don't mean to be rude, your vote applies to the entire city.
Amen. Amen. It does. It does. And my question for Mr. Pernick, what is the cost of the improvements that you see happening? Does 1 million cover it? I'm just a curiosity. No. I'm not trying to get more. I just want to know the extent of the extent of what you have envisioned there. That's all.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's
But since you've
honor
been
to
here
be
the
here,
entire night, I thought
representing-
you needed to say
Yeah.
something.
I would guess that the million's not going to be enough to do the pool project. So we've got kind of different components of the pool that need work. One is the pumping system, one is the outdated building that we want to upgrade, but also the pool structure itself needs some improvements. This million would be kind of going toward the pumping system as proposed and the building portion of it, but we will also need additional funds in addition to the million to address those other issues. I would also anticipate that the pumping and the pool renovation or the building renovation will probably exceed 1 million. So we know we need to do the project, but we haven't done the detailed engineering work to see exactly what kind of investment we'll need to make in the building. I will say it will be at least 1 million and likely much more.
And so I hope you're not saying, let's give more at this time.
I'm not.
I mean, I
just
can
want-
tell where you're going, and
I
I'm a
just
little
want to
concerned.
acknowledge that, no, I wanted to acknowledge that
If
we
you
are
gave him what he asked for,
exceeding
that
the
would be wonderful.
project.
Yes, we appreciate the council's support.
Well, and hopefully your fee-based items are coming back on board, so you'll be able to get the budget a little bit.
Correct,
back up
and
there.
not unlike the city, the 5 million in lost revenue, we've also lost about $5 million through the fees. And what that does is it's $5 million that we would have had for our capital plan, but because we didn't generate that that means we're 5 million short to put into our capital plan. And as Brian and I have discussed, the pool happens to be an eligible project in an eligible area, and that this will help us see through the capital plan we had planned prior to losing the 5 million because of lost revenue from COVID.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good? All right, thank you.
Okay, I think Ruth would like to speak.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would suggest the free day be once a month. I remember those days being a broke teacher and not even being able to scrape up the $3 per person. We do have low-income families, so I think that's a great idea, and thank you for suggesting that, Councilmember Kavanaugh. I have a suggestion with regard to the business revolving loan fund that ties into an ordinance that we just recently passed a couple of months ago. We passed an ordinance allowing for businesses to expand outdoors. And I would really like for some of that business revolving loan fund on line 12 of page 12 of the report to go towards helping businesses, beautify those outdoor permanent dining areas. I'm here at the International Shopping Center Conference, and there are some great ideas on how to make it look more aesthetically pleasing, and that would help with traffic as well. So I would ask that with regard to the business revolving loan fund, that some of those funds be used for businesses so that they can make those outdoor spaces look aesthetically pleasing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. The goal for the revolving loan fund is to increase capacity for businesses, and that will result in employment opportunities as well. And
by having outdoor space, they can increase capacity.
Exactly, and that's exactly it. That's really it. It's increasing capacity of the businesses.
And then I'm just going to speak to the acquisition of air filters. I know for me, in my classroom with, 25 kids, it gives me a peace of mind to know that there's air filters in my classroom. It's not a large expense, 90,000. But I would like to, make sure that that's included in the, for having the acquisition of Merck filters for cities' HVAC systems. It's also been shown having those air filters has actually reduced incidences of colds and flus and things like that. So it's not just for COVID, but it's making sure that we keep our employees safe and not getting sick. So from other things as well. So I'd like to advocate on behalf of that. But there's a lot of great things on this. I don't know if I need to make a motion, Mayor, in order for public to have input on this. If we
Okay,
can do a
well,
survey,
what I
or
would like
how
to
we can do that.
see is if we vote on staff's recommendation for this evening, and then come back and we'll have a time to discuss these other items, and then everybody can look at them and not just try doing a quick point and grab tonight. So we do an educated finding on what we want to recommend for our city. And
So
I
moved.
think if we just jump on it tonight, that's too much, and we have plenty of time. So my desire is to vote on what staff's recommendation is, including the $1 million for the pools.
I think I can word it
Yeah, and
the way you want.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so we're going to use staff's recommendations, just add a little bit. So I move that we provide input regarding the potential list of ARPA projects and direct staff to return to the city council for further consideration and allow city council to have public input and/or research items. And then number 2, to approve the transfer of $5 million in ARPA funds to the Streets and Roads Fund for arterial street projects and $1 million to the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District for their pool project.
Second.
Did staff get that written down?
It's on tape.
Okay, good. You didn't just make that up?
I read part of their stuff and had to add.
All right, all right.
I think that's what we all wanted.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
it
that
was
was a motion.
seconded.
Do we have a second? We have a
You had
second.
it.
Yeah, I
Mike?
seconded it as well. I think all of us seconded it.
Call for the vote?
Councilmember Luevanos, your vote?
Vote yes for me, please.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 9A, City Council member reports.
Okay, we'll start with Councilmember Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Thursday, November 11th, I attended the Rancho Simi Parks and Recreation District's Veterans Day celebration over at Veterans Park. It was very well done, and I appreciate them putting it on. There was a few council members there with me. On Friday, November 12th, I attended our closed session meeting where we chose our new city attorney, and congratulations to him, and congratulations for finishing his contract, getting it going. On Sunday, November 14th, I attended the Congressional Gold Medal ceremony for the Chinese American World War II veterans and their families held at the VFW Museum in our town center. On Thursday, November 18th, I attended virtually the Simi Valley Tourism Committee meeting along with Linda Swan from the city, and it was an interesting meeting. We didn't have a quorum, so it was short, which I like. And after that, I attended the VCREA meeting, and that went a little bit longer. Nothing really important to report back to the city on that. On the same day, November 18th, I attended, along with Councilmember Luevanos, the Task Force on Homelessness. On Friday, November 19th, I attended did the VCTC Ad Hoc Committee because we were trying to choose our executive director. And I want to say, I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. And on Friday, December 3rd, I attended virtually the VCTC meeting by phone because I was out of state. We did approve the MetroLink dual tracking in Simi Valley, so that's a project that's now been approved by VCTC, and it'll be happening. It's up to MetroLink and, not MetroLink, but I guess it is MetroLink and all the other LoSAN, the other railroad authorities, to get all their permits and stuff together to get it done, but it is on its way. Nothing else really pressing for Simi Valley to report from that meeting. SCAG was dark, and that's my report.
Okay, Councilmember Litzner.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended many of the same things that Councilmember Judge attended, but let me just briefly go through my list. On Monday, November the 8th, appreciated our, well, of course, we were in session that day, and we had some meetings with Habitat for Humanity, et cetera. Let me go into beyond that. On November the 11th, Veterans Day, I appreciated that there was kind of a divide and conquer. The mayor and I attended the Veterans Day commemoration held at the Reagan Library and heard Mr. Bob Parsons speak, who spoke most eloquently about PTSD and helping veterans, and I appreciated his philosophy and what he had to say and how it's something we should be very involved with. On Friday, November 12th, we were all very pleased to listen to the interviews and to select our new city attorney, David Caceres. Congratulations. Sunday, November 14th, also attended the Congressional Gold Medal ceremony, beautifully done, and an honor that it was held here in Simi Valley at Veterans Town Center at the wonderful VFW Museum of Military History. Also attended on that day the Golden Anniversary Mass at St. Peter Clavier Church, and I would like to commend them for 50 years of worshiping in our community and all that they do. On Monday, November the 15th, I was representative for the city attending the Simi Valley Ed Foundation Teacher of the Month and commend Sharice Bonsall of Justin Early Learners Academy for all she does, who was honored there. On Tuesday, November the 16th, I attended the Youth Council meeting. It was held actually at the Reagan Library, and I want to commend those who put it together. It was a wonderful planning session where they planned town hall in the future. There was and the leadership summit that is also going to be occurring. And I will say that the staff of the Reagan Library were wonderful hosts, and our youth are doing some great things. On Wednesday, November the 17th, I attended the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Commission meeting, and thank you to Mayor Pro Tem Dee Dee Kavanaugh, who actually chaired that meeting that day. One of the things that was discussed, and I appreciated the discussion we had today, was the development of a grants program or potential grants program for the cultural arts, performing arts recovery grant to allow community members and groups and performing groups to have the funds necessary to use that beautiful facility. And so, again, that may be something, as we're discussing this last agenda item, that will materialize with financial support. Appreciate my bi-weekly meetings with city manager. On Friday, November the 19th, I attended Simi Valley Foundation Teacher of the Month, where we honored Eric Temple, who teaches at Monte Vista School. Following week, on Monday, November the 22nd, was honored to attend the appointment of Commander Steve Shorts, where he was promoted to be our deputy chief, and that was a beautiful gathering, and he will serve us well, and appreciate all that he's done on our force. And thank you, our Chief Livingstone. I think that was an excellent selection. And I also want to say thank you to our Deputy Chief Robert Brill, who will be leaving us, who's also served wonderfully in that position. And so there will be a changing of the guard, but we are in good hands. On Tuesday, November the 23rd, attended the Interfaith Thanksgiving celebration that was held at the LDS Church, but there were 9 to 10 different faiths that were represented, and I know there was other council members in attendance, and Mayor Pro Tem Dee Dee Kavanaugh eloquently shared the words of George Washington, and appreciated her representing us there. Thank you so much. Thanksgiving was a wonderful day to gather, but my heart went out to those who were affected by, some in our community, by the power shutoffs. I don't know what it is about Thanksgiving and PSPSs. It just kind of makes me sick that it coincides, and I do think we need to do all that we can to say we are not allowed to have a power shutoff on Thanksgiving. I don't care what's going on. I just think that should be an edict. I know we don't have control, but it just should be an edict. On Sunday, November 28th, attended the Hanukkah at Simi Town Center Hanukkah lighting ceremony and celebration. And my claim to fame was I was there with Councilmember Dee Kavanaugh and Ruth Levinos, but my claim to fame is that my granddaughter, Alexa, the picture was taken of her spinning a menorah. If you missed that, the dreidel, spin the dreidel, excuse me. And in the acorn, there's a picture of her spinning it. And so that's now she's now a star because and really she was just trying to get the chocolates out of the middle, but I'm not going to tell anybody that publicly. Just a quick summary of this weekend. I wanted to commend my fellow council members for all participating at Simi Community Christmas. That's a beautiful event that's put on, again, an interfaith celebration that's been going on for 3 days. And all those here at the dais were there doing a sing-along, and I appreciate everyone's time being there. I think we all, it was a good thing to be at. And kudos to those who put it on and did so much decorating, etc. I also wanted to acknowledge that on Sunday, December 5th, I also attended Strathern Historical Society's Holiday in the Park. And that was it was a lovely event that highlighted our history here in Simi Valley, and they gave tours, and there was performances, and it just was an outstanding event. So thank you to those who were involved with that as well. And finally, today, did have the opportunity of being part of weighing in on the Simi Valley's Library Strategic Plan, and I just want to commend those of the library that are looking forward and trying to envision how we can make that facility better for our community. And so that concludes my report, and thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Luevanos.
Thank you, Mayor. On Monday, November 8th, I also attended the meeting with Habitat for Humanity. Really excited to see some affordable housing coming to Simi Valley for our hardworking low-income residents. On Thursday, November 11th, I too attended the Veterans Day ceremony on November 11th, honoring our nation's veterans. On Friday, November 12th, I was also there for the city attorney interviews. On Sunday, November 14th, I got to attend the Golden Anniversary Mass and see our old priest, which was nice to see him again, Father Bauer. We hadn't seen him in a long time, and it was a beautiful message by the bishop there of community and family and giving, and it was wonderful to be there with my St. Peter Claver parish family. On Thursday, November 18th, I attended the Task Force on Homelessness along with Council Member Judge. On Tuesday, November 23rd, I also attended the Simi Valley Interfaith Thanksgiving service, and it was beautiful to see so many faiths represented there. On Sunday, November 28th, I also attended the Hanukkah celebration at the Simi Valley Town Center, which was beautiful. On Thursday, December 2nd, I attended the Clean Power Alliance Board of Directors meeting, where they gave a fiscal report. And the good news is if you are a Clean Power Alliance customer, your bill will be going down by about 6% in March due to PCIA rates dropping by 27%. So you're going to have a lower bill than those who are SoCal Edison customers, just letting you know. On Friday, December 3rd, I attended the Urinetown musical at Santa Susana High School. And if you didn't get to see it, gosh, it was really funny. It was very, very entertaining. Santa Susana High School has a beautiful performing arts auditorium. And yes, Urinetown, U-R-I-N-E, not PP Town, Urinetown. It was a great comedy musical. And if you missed it, they're going to have more performances of dance concerts and stuff, but it was a great musical and everyone's very talented there. Saturday, December 4th, I did get to attend the Simi Valley Christmas celebration City Council sing-along. We played maracas, we sang songs, and Councilwoman Lidster was sight reading the music on the keyboard. Thank you so very much for providing the music for us. And that is my report. Thank you. Oh, and last but not least, I am here in Las Vegas at the International Shopping Center Conference. Talked to a lot of businesses and retailers and realtors about bringing stuff to Simi Valley, and it's really exciting. My daughter was excited because I talked to the people at Raising Cane's. So I'm here to work for the city on behalf of the city and to make sure that we can keep our businesses and revive our retail space and make sure that we have a strong retail and business future in the city of Simi Valley for our residents. That's my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On November 11th, I also attended the Veterans Day ceremony at Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District put on at the Veterans Plaza. They always do a great job, so thank you. On Friday, November 12th, I also was part of the closed session where we unanimously elected or chose our new city council, or excuse me, our new city attorney, Mr. David Caceres, so congratulations. On Wednesday, November 17th, I did chair the Simi Valley Arts Commission meeting. That was wonderful. I got to learn a little bit more about the commission itself, so that was nice. On Thursday, November 18th, I had the VCAS Commission, which is the Ventura County Animal Shelter. Each of the 8 cities that are involved have a commissioner, and so I represent Simi Valley there. It's always very interesting to see what's going on at the shelter. And go on their webpage if you're looking for a doggy or kitty. There's lots available. That afternoon, I also had the Economic Development Collaborative General Board meeting at 3:30, and try to go through fast. We had a whole month to cover. On Monday, November 22nd, I also had the pleasure of attending the promotion of Commander Steve Shorts to Deputy Chief. So that was wonderful. I'm planning on attending the retirement for Deputy Chief Brill, so I kind of get to go double there. But Steve will do a great job here for us in Simi Valley. On Thursday, November 23rd, I also attended the Interfaith Thanksgiving that was at the LDS Church. That was wonderful. Being part of the program representing the city, and then having all the different faith community and churches there, churches, synagogues, and mosque. So it was very, very, a lot of fun and very heartwarming for everybody to be there. On Sunday, November 28th, I also attended the lighting of the Hanukkah at the Simi Valley Town Center by our local Chabad. And on Wednesday, December 1st, I had the Economic Development Collaborative Executive Board meeting. And on Saturday, December 4th, I also attended the 15th Annual Simi Valley Community Sing-Along. And thank you very much to Councilmember Litzter for her keyboard playing, like Councilmember Luevano said, as well as the ukulele. She grew up in Hawaii for a few years, so she learned to play the ukulele. And her husband was sitting in the first row, and he was filming us. I'm like, oh my gosh. But he said we actually sounded good. He must have had earplugs in, because he said we actually sounded pretty good. I was very surprised at that. And that same day, I also attended Simi Valley Days Foundation had a craft fair here in our Civic Center, so I was able to attend that and spent a lot of money because I hit the ATM first. I probably shouldn't have done that. On Monday, today, I met with the representatives from Cavalia, along with the Councilmember Judge. And my last thing, I just want to wish Sue Klepper a very happy birthday this coming Wednesday. She's our executive assistant in the city manager's office. So happy birthday, Sue. And that's it for my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to do abbreviated because I want staff to be able to get a good night's sleep so they'll be here on time in the morning, ready to cover for us. And mine's more in the form of announcements. I'd like to congratulate Steve Shorts for becoming Deputy Chief. Great call, Chief Livingstone. And you better watch out. He might just, keep on moving. So, but anyway, congratulations to Steve. Well-deserved. Also to the new city attorney, David Caceres. Good job. Welcome aboard. We'll make it really official here, I think, the next meeting. The other thing I'd like to remind everybody that the Police Explorers Foundation, I think is their name, is having a Christmas toy drive for kids of all, I guess, pretty much all ages of Simi Valley. And that's going to be from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock up at the Town Center Mall. And we ask that you bring 1 or 20, doesn't matter, unwrapped new toys. And the goal of the Police Explorers are to give all children, number one, age appropriate toys. So we're not giving Barbie dolls to 16-year-olds. And And we want them to go out with armfuls of toys. And it's all for those that need a little boost here in our community. So Town Center, 3 to 6, and bring a toy, and there'll be some festivities going on, and it's right before the Christmas tree lighting up there. So it'd be a good evening to spend with us. And with that, I'm going to stop because, I'm sorry? Saturday, December 11th, right? Yeah, okay. Whew, scared me. Thought I'd give you the wrong day. Okay, and that's it. So now we'll move on to 9B. Future agenda items.
Mayor, I have 2 requests.
Yes, Councilmember Luevanos.
We received an email on
Can everybody
Wednesday
hear?
of this week.
I think you lost some volume. Hold on. Try again, Ruth.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
We received an email on Wednesday, December 1st from the California Department of Water Resources announcing a 0% allocation of water to the State Water Project for the first time in its history. And Simi Valley is dependent on this water through a metropolitan water district. I would like a future agenda item very quickly on reducing water usage because we need to address it. I don't want us to be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months down the road and realizing we have to start addressing this water shortage now. So I'd like us to
I'll
address it.
interrupt you and say I'll second that. I agree with you. That's something we have to address.
Thank you, Mayor. My second request is for us to, I had asked the city attorney to research the potential of us joining the lawsuit that City of Los Angeles, and I believe other entities as well, have filed against Boeing, Department of Energy, and NASA, as well as writing a letter to DCSC and Governor Newsom to request enforcement of the agreed consent decree for the cleanup of the Santa Susana Field Lab. We do have a lot of worried residents, including Mr. Pachowski, who spoke in public comments. And we do have a role to play. We can, as a city, take a leadership role and demand accountability from the polluters.
Okay, I think that would take a second. If anybody's interested, please second it.
Well, I'll second because that way it gives our city attorney, an opportunity to look into it.
Right. We are already looking into it, and we're hoping to have a memo to the city council.
Yeah, I think we brought,
Okay.
excuse me. Didn't we bring this up at the last meeting, and he's going to bring us a report? So I don't know why we want to agendize it. We should wait for his report.
Yeah, correct. I would recommend waiting for the city attorney to provide the memo, and then we can, if the council would like to bring it back at that time, we can more than happy to agendize it.
Okay, that works.
Okay, you withdraw your second?
Councilmember? Okay.
Can we write a letter to DTSC and Governor Newsom requesting enforcement of the AOC agreement as a city?
We've done that in the past. That might be appropriate again, yes.
If, again, I would feel, we've done it. It's not like we haven't been active in doing that. This city has always supported the cleanup. I don't know of any council in the years since that became, I don't want to say just an issue, but a problem. And so let's talk to the city attorney and let's let his recommendations come to us, and then we can discuss all of that.
Well, my understanding is that the governor is in negotiations right now through DTSC to possibly allow the polluters not to clean up and abide by this consent agreement by the end of this month. And that's the urgency with us as a city writing a letter to demand the full cleanup. I believe the last letter that the city wrote was in 2013, to my knowledge.
Yeah, we have written letters in the past. We're more than happy to do another one for the mayor's signature. It's consistent with what the council's position has been. So.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem signing it. It's a matter of folks come across like somehow that we're holding the cleanup up, and that's far from the truth. We're encouraging the cleanup and always have. And there was a time where I personally objected to something they wanted to do that would have a negative impact on the city. And if they wanted to spin that into, I wasn't supportive of the cleanup, then go ahead and let them, because it was pretty easy to see what I was trying to prevent. So anyway, yeah, we'll bring that, and we can do a letter.
Yeah, I just bring it up because time is of the essence, and they're negotiations right now, and they're saying by the end of the month, they may reach a negotiation. That's why I'm asking for a renewed letter, so that they know that we, the city, as a united front, do want that.
I think we are supportive of that letter. It's in support of our position. I just want to clarify,
Would you like the floor?
please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Was it really 2013 the last time we've written a letter? Because I thought we've written something just very recently.
I think we just did one about 12 months ago.
That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
it
So I
was
just
about
want,
a year ago.
I just want to go on the record that we've done so regularly,
We're
but
doing it
certainly,
annually.
certainly willing to do it again and timely. So
And
I don't
and
disagree.
Like I say, it was long before this council it was being done.
Right.
Meaning that we're
Started.
consistent.
It started, right. I just want to make sure it's clear on the record that we're doing it regularly, but let's do it again.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, once again tonight, we have to adjourn, unfortunately, in memory of Mary Little, who is the wife of our former mayor and council member, Bill Little of Camarillo. And also, of course, I think most are aware of the passing of former Senator Bob Dole. And so we'll close tonight and adjourn tonight in their memory. Meeting's adjourned.